Every heavy mind has a moment when it can no longer pretend it is fine. In the daylight, you may smile, answer messages, handle duties, and carry yourself like everything is under control. But when the night comes, when the room becomes quiet, when the world stops pulling on you, the weight begins to speak. The old regrets, the unfinished worries, the quiet fears, the memories that return when you are too tired to fight them, and suddenly your own mind feels like something you have been carrying for far too long. But tonight is not another night for fighting yourself. Tonight is not for replaying what hurt you, chasing answers that never came, or punishing yourself for what you could not control. Tonight is for release. A slow, steady return to the part of you that existed before life became so loud. The part of you that still knows how to breathe, how to soften, how to rest, without needing everything to be fixed first. The Stoics understood something many people forget. The mind becomes heavy when it tries to own what was never truly within its power. Other people's choices, the past, the future, the opinions of those who misunderstand you, the outcomes you cannot force, the apologies you may never receive, the answers that time has not yet given. Peace begins when you stop holding all of this like it belongs to you. After tonight, your mind will not need to carry the same weight in the same way. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you will learn how to place each burden where it belongs. You will learn how to watch a thought without becoming its prisoner. You will learn how to let the night hold what your heart has been gripping too tightly. So let this be the hour you stop wrestling with yesterday. Let this be the night you stop asking tired thoughts to solve your whole life. 4 hours to loosen the pressure inside your chest. 4 hours to give the mind back its silence. 4 hours to remember that rest is not something you earn after you suffer enough. It is something you are allowed to receive now. And as the mind begins to loosen its grip on the night, we come to the first weight many people carry without even knowing its name. It is not always the weight of what happened yesterday. Sometimes it is the weight of an old version of you that your soul has already left behind. But your mind keeps dragging forward like proof that you are still the same person. There is a quiet sadness in outgrowing something your mind still keeps defending. You can feel it when the night becomes still. A part of you knows you are not who you used to be. You have learned. You have survived. You have become wiser through things you never wanted to face. Yet your thoughts keep returning to old fears, old shame, old patterns, old identities, and old stories that no longer fit the person you are becoming. This is one of the deepest reasons the mind becomes heavy, not because you are broken, but because your inner life is divided. One part of you is ready to move forward. Another part is still standing guard over a door that no longer needs protection. The soul grows quietly. It does not always announce itself. It does not shout, "I am done with this pain now." It simply begins to desire peace where it once desired approval. It begins to desire truth where it once tolerated confusion. It begins to desire rest where it once believed constant struggle was the price of being strong. But the mind is slower to accept change. The mind remembers what hurt. The mind remembers what failed. The mind remembers what embarrassed you, disappointed you, and made you feel unsafe. So even when your deeper self has already outgrown a burden, your thoughts may keep carrying it because they are trying to protect you from feeling that kind of pain again. That is why many people lie down at night and feel tired in a way sleep alone cannot fix. Their body is in the present, but their mind is still living inside old rooms, old conversations, old versions of themselves, old explanations they never got, old mistakes they have already learned from, but still keep punishing themselves for. The day ends, but the mind reopens the past like a case file, searching for one more reason to feel guilty, one more reason to feel afraid, one more reason to believe peace must wait. The Stoics would ask a simple question. Is this still within your power, or are you only carrying the shadow of something that has already passed? This question is not cold, it is freedom. Because much of what makes the mind heavy is not the present moment itself, but the refusal to release what no longer belongs to the present. You may still be carrying a mistake that taught you its lesson years ago. You may still be carrying a person who has already shown you who they are. You may still be carrying an identity built from survival, even though survival is no longer the only thing life is asking from you. There is a difference between honoring what shaped you and becoming trapped by it. Your past may explain certain fears, but it does not have to become the master of your nights. Your disappointment may have changed you, but it does not have to keep owning your breath. Your pain may deserve compassion, but it does not deserve the power to keep writing every thought you think before sleep. The soul outgrows pain when it has learned the lesson hidden inside it, but the mind keeps carrying pain when it mistakes repetition for safety. This is why you may keep thinking about things you no longer want. You may keep replaying situations you no longer need to solve. You may keep preparing for storms that are not here anymore. Your mind believes it is being responsible. It believes that if it keeps remembering, it can prevent the future from hurting you the same way. But sometimes, remembering becomes a cage. Sometimes, thinking becomes a form of holding on. Sometimes the mind is not protecting you anymore. It is simply keeping you in the emotional climate of a life you have already outgrown. And this is where Stoic wisdom becomes gentle medicine. It teaches you to separate what happened from what you continue to carry. What happened may not have been your choice, but the meaning you keep feeding it tonight can begin to change. You cannot erase every wound. You cannot undo every loss. You cannot force people to understand the pain they caused, but you can stop giving old pain the authority to decide the quality of your rest. You can stop treating yesterday as if it still has a legal right to occupy your mind tonight. The mind becomes lighter when it understands that release is not betrayal. You are not betraying your old self by growing beyond old suffering. You are not pretending nothing happened by allowing peace to enter. You are not being careless by refusing to rehearse every fear. You are simply admitting that some burdens were useful only for a season. They helped you notice danger. They helped you learn boundaries. They helped you become more aware. But now, if you keep carrying them, they no longer protect you. They only exhaust you. A person can outgrow the need to prove themselves, outgrow the need to be understood by everyone, outgrow the desire to fix people who are committed to staying the same, outgrow guilt that came from doing the best they could with what they knew at the time, outgrow the belief that rest must wait until life is perfect. But the mind may still cling to these old rules because they once gave a sense of control. This is why inner heaviness often feels familiar. It is not comfortable, but it is known. And the mind often chooses the known weight over the unknown freedom. But tonight, you do not need to fight the mind. You only need to lead it gently. When an old thought rises, you do not have to chase it. When an old regret knocks, you do not have to open the door fully. When an old fear whispers, you do not have to make it your teacher again. You can simply say, "I have learned from this. I do not need to carry it into sleep." That sentence may sound simple, but repeated slowly, it becomes a doorway. The soul does not ask for much at night. It does not need applause. It does not need perfect answers. It does not need the entire future solved before morning. It only asks for permission to stop dragging what no longer belongs to it. It asks for quiet. It asks for space. It asks for the dignity of being allowed to become new without being pulled backward by every old thought. So if your mind feels heavy tonight, ask yourself what part of the weight is truly from today, and what part is from a life your soul has already outgrown. You may discover that not everything inside you needs to be solved. Some things simply need to be set down. Some fears need to be thanked for trying to protect you, then released. Some memories need to be allowed to fade without being forced. Some versions of you need to be honored, then left in the past where they belong. After tonight, the goal is not to forget who you were. The goal is to stop living under the weight of who you had to be. You can respect the strength that carried you through hard seasons without making that same heaviness your permanent home. You can let the mind rest. You can let the soul breathe. You can allow the old story to loosen, not because it never mattered, but because it has already done its work. And as this understanding settles, the night becomes less like a battlefield and more like a quiet room where the old self can finally lay down its armor. And when the old self begins to lay down its armor, something else becomes clear. The night does not create every burden. Sometimes it only reveals the burdens that daylight helped you ignore. During the day, noise covers the mind. Duties distract it, people interrupt it, movement keeps it occupied. But when everything becomes quiet, the thoughts that were waiting underneath begin to rise. This is why the night can feel so loud, even when the room is silent. There is a strange pain that comes when the world becomes quiet, and your own mind refuses to do the same. You lie there, ready for rest, but instead of peace, the thoughts arrive one after another. A memory from years ago, a worry about tomorrow, a sentence someone said, a mistake you thought you had forgiven yourself for, a fear you could not name during the day, but now it stands in the dark with a clear voice, and you wonder, why now? Why does my mind wait until I am tired before it starts speaking this loudly? The Stoic answer is simple, but deep. During the day, the mind is scattered outward. At night, it returns inward. In the day, you are answering life. At night, life stops asking, and the mind begins to answer itself. This is why thoughts feel louder in the dark, not because they are always true, not because they are urgent, not because they deserve your obedience. They feel louder because there is less outside noise competing with them. In the daylight, you can outrun certain thoughts without noticing it. You check your phone, you work, you clean, you talk, you solve small problems, you move from one task to another. The mind feels busy, and busy often pretends to be peace. But stillness removes the disguise. Stillness asks, what have you been carrying beneath all this movement? And because most people are not taught how to sit with themselves gently, the first meeting with stillness can feel like being trapped inside a room full of unfinished conversations. The Stoics understood that the mind does not suffer only from events. It suffers from the judgment it attaches to events. A thought at night may say, "You failed," but the event itself may simply be, "Something did not happen the way you wanted." A thought may say, "You are behind in life," but the truth may simply be, "Your path is taking a different shape." A thought may say, "They forgot you because you do not matter," but the reality may simply be, "Someone did not respond." The heaviness grows when the mind turns facts into punishments. At night, tiredness weakens your inner guard. During the day, you may have the energy to challenge a thought. You may tell yourself, "That is not true," or "I will handle it later." But when the body is tired, the mind becomes more sensitive. Small worries feel large. Old memories feel closer. A simple concern can begin to sound like a prophecy. This is why the Stoic practice of observation matters. You must learn to notice the thought without immediately believing it. A loud thought is not always a wise thought. A repeated thought is not always an important thought. A painful thought is not always a truthful thought. Many people make the mistake of treating every nighttime thought like a message that must be solved before morning. But not every thought is a command. Some thoughts are only echoes. Some are leftovers from the day. Some are fears asking for attention. Some are old habits of the mind trying to regain control. When you understand this, you stop rushing to obey every voice inside you. You begin to say, "I hear you, but I do not have to follow you." This is one of the greatest Stoic skills before sleep, separating the thinker from the thought. You are not every idea that passes through your mind. You are the one who can watch the idea pass. You are not the fear that rises in your chest. You are the awareness that can notice the fear rising. You are not the memory that knocks at the door. You are the quiet presence that can decide whether that memory needs to enter tonight. The night becomes painful when the mind forgets this distance. It grabs one thought and says, "This is me." It grabs one fear and says, "This is my future." It grabs one regret and says, "This is my identity." But Stoicism teaches you to step back, to look at the thought as something appearing, not something ruling, to say, "This is a thought about failure. This is a thought about loss. This is a thought about tomorrow. This is not the whole of me." When you name a thought clearly, you weaken its spell. A worry becomes less powerful when you call it worry. Regret becomes less controlling when you call it regret. Fear becomes less mysterious when you call it fear. The mind often suffers because it treats thoughts like reality. But when you name them, you create space. And in that space, wisdom can breathe. The reason thoughts become louder at night is also because the soul is asking for attention after being ignored all day. You may spend daylight hours being strong for others, useful for others, patient for others, available for others. You may silence your own feelings because there is no time to feel them properly. You may tell yourself, "Later." Then night comes and later has arrived. The feelings you postponed begin to speak, not to hurt you, but to be acknowledged. But acknowledgement is not the same as drowning. You do not need to sink into every feeling just because it appears. You can meet it with calm honesty. You can say, "Yes, I felt hurt today. Yes, I am worried. Yes, something in me is tired." This kind of truth does not make the mind heavier. It makes the mind safer, because what is admitted gently does not need to scream for attention. The Stoics did not teach emotional denial. They taught emotional order. They understood that feelings come, but they do not have to sit on the throne. Thoughts arrive, but they do not have to become law. Night may bring noise, but you can become the quiet authority inside it. You can listen without surrendering. You can feel without being swallowed. You can observe without becoming afraid of what you observe. This matters because many people fear their own minds at night. They dread the silence because they know silence will bring the thoughts back. So they distract themselves until exhaustion takes over. They scroll, they worry, they replay, they numb. But distraction does not create peace. It only delays the meeting. And whatever is delayed without care often returns louder. Stoic sleep begins when you stop running from the inner room. You enter it slowly. You sit with the thoughts as a wise elder would sit with restless children. Not angry, not afraid, not controlled by their noise, simply present. You do not shout at the mind, "Be quiet." You show it, through calm attention, that it no longer needs to panic to be heard. Tonight, when your thoughts become loud, do not assume something is wrong with you. The mind is not your enemy. It may simply be tired, crowded, overstimulated, and untrained in rest. It may be carrying unfinished emotions from the day. It may be trying to protect you in the only way it knows how. But you can teach it a better way. You can teach it that safety does not come from replaying everything. Safety can come from returning to the present. And the present, at night, is simple. The bed beneath you, the breath moving through you, the darkness around you, the body asking for sleep, the soul asking to be released from the noise. Nothing more is required in this moment. You do not need to solve the future before sunrise. You do not need to explain the past before your eyes close. You do not need to win an argument inside your head before you are allowed to rest. The thoughts may still come, but now they do not have to own the room. Let them rise like distant sounds outside a window. Let them pass without turning everyone into a mission. Let the mind learn that quiet is not danger. Quiet is where the truth becomes simple again. And as the night deepens, you begin to understand. Thoughts feel louder in darkness, not because they are stronger, but because you are finally still enough to hear them. And once you can hear them without obeying them, the silence no longer feels like a threat. It becomes a teacher, a soft place, a doorway back to yourself. And once you understand that nighttime thoughts are not always truth, only noise asking for attention, you begin to see the next burden more clearly. It is the habit of turning every unfinished problem into a fire. The mind looks at one unanswered message, one unpaid bill, one difficult conversation, one uncertain tomorrow, and suddenly it acts as if sleep would be irresponsible. As if resting means you have failed to care, as if closing your eyes is a betrayal of everything still unresolved. But not every unfinished thing is an emergency. There is a certain kind of tiredness that comes from trying to solve life at the wrong hour. You may be lying in bed, the lights are low, the house is quiet, and yet your mind starts opening every drawer it can find. What about this? What about that? What if tomorrow goes wrong? What if you forget something? What if someone is upset? What if this problem becomes bigger? Before you know it, your body is trying to sleep, but your thoughts are standing in the middle of the night like a worried guard refusing to leave its post. This is how the mind becomes unfair to itself. It takes a problem that belongs to tomorrow and drags it into tonight. It takes something that needs patience and treats it like danger. It takes a decision that requires a clear mind and demands an answer from a tired one. And because you are exhausted, the problem does not become easier. It becomes larger. It becomes darker. It becomes wrapped in fear. A small concern becomes a heavy shadow, not because the concern is truly impossible, but because the mind is trying to carry it when it has no strength left. The Stoics understood that wisdom is not only knowing what to do. Wisdom is also knowing when the mind is not fit to decide. A tired mind is not always a truthful mind. A restless mind is not always a wise mind. A mind full of fear can turn a normal delay into disaster, a simple uncertainty into doom, and one unfinished task into proof that your whole life is falling apart. This is why you must be careful about taking instructions from your thoughts at night. They may sound serious, but seriousness is not the same as wisdom. Many people believe that if they stop worrying, they are being careless. They think worry is proof of love, proof of responsibility, proof that they are paying attention. But worry and responsibility are not the same thing. Responsibility asks, what is the next right action? Worry asks the same question again and again, even when no action can be taken. Responsibility can write down what must be done tomorrow. Worry keeps you awake, pretending that thinking in circles is the same as preparing. Responsibility respects the limits of the hour. Worry ignores them. Before sleep, the Stoic mind learns to divide life into two simple groups: what can be acted on now and what must wait. If something can truly be done now, do it simply, without drama. Write the note. Set the reminder. Put the item where you will see it in the morning. Send the necessary message if it is appropriate and kind. But if nothing wise can be done tonight, then the problem has no right to steal the whole night. It may be unfinished, yes, but unfinished does not mean urgent. Unfinished does not mean dangerous. Unfinished does not mean you must bleed your peace into it. This is a powerful shift. Instead of asking, how do I solve my whole life before I sleep? You ask, What is actually required of me in this hour? Most of the time, the answer is very little. Breathe, rest, let the body recover, let the mind clear, let tomorrow receive the tasks that belong to tomorrow. The present moment is not asking you to fix every chapter at once. It is only asking you to stop making the night responsible for work it was never designed to do. The mind treats unfinished problems as emergencies because it fears loss of control. It believes that if it keeps watching the problem cannot surprise you. It believes that if it keeps rehearsing the worst outcome, you will be ready. But this is a painful illusion. Watching a problem all night does not always protect you from it. Sometimes it only drains the strength you need to face it well. Rehearsing pain does not prevent pain. It often makes you suffer before anything has even happened. The Stoics would remind you that control is not found in panic. Control is found in clear judgment, and clear judgment needs rest. A farmer does not dig up the seed every night to check if it is growing. A sailor does not scream at the sea until the storm obeys. A wise person does not keep shaking a closed door when the key will only arrive in the morning. Some things need timing, some things need daylight, some things need a rested mind, a calmer body, and a wider view than midnight can give. This does not mean you ignore your problems. It means you stop worshipping them. You stop giving every concern the highest seat in your inner world. You stop allowing one unfinished thing to act like the ruler of your peace. A problem can be real without being allowed to become your master. A duty can be important without being allowed to destroy your rest. A situation can need attention without needing your suffering tonight. There is a quiet discipline in saying, "Not now," not because the problem does not matter, but because your peace also matters. Your nervous system matters. Your sleep matters. Your ability to think clearly tomorrow matters. When you say, "Not now," you are not abandoning life. You are placing life in order. You are telling the mind, "This belongs to morning. This belongs to action. This belongs to time. This does not belong to my pillow." At night your mind may resist this. It may say, "But what if something goes wrong?" And you can answer gently, "Then I will meet it when it arrives." It may say, "But what if I forget?" And you can say, "I will write it down and let it rest." It may say, "But what if I am not doing enough?" And you can say, "Doing enough includes allowing myself to recover." These simple inner replies are not weak. They are training. You are teaching your mind that panic is not the boss. Fear is not the judge. Urgency is not always truth. A useful practice before sleep is to give each problem a proper place. Not every concern belongs in the heart. Some belong on paper. Not every fear belongs in the mind. Some belong in tomorrow's plan. Not every pain belongs in tonight's silence. Some belong in time, where understanding slowly becomes clearer. When you move a problem from your chest to a simple written note, you tell the mind, "You do not have to keep holding this by force." This is why writing down tomorrow's first step can be so calming. It turns a storm into a path. It turns pressure into direction. But even then, there will be some problems you cannot organize neatly. Some things will remain uncertain. Some answers will not come quickly. Some people will not respond the way you hope. Some situations will stay open longer than you want. This is where Stoic patience becomes a form of rest. You remember that life does not become safe just because you worry about it. Life becomes more bearable when you stop demanding that everything be resolved before you allow yourself peace. The night is not a courtroom where every unfinished thing must defend itself. The night is not a workshop where your entire future must be repaired. The night is not a battlefield where every fear must be defeated before sleep can come. The night is a threshold, a place where you return to what is simple: breath, body, silence, surrender. You do not need to walk into tomorrow already exhausted from fighting it in your head. So when an unfinished problem appears tonight, look at it with calm eyes. Ask, can I take a wise action now? If the answer is yes, take the smallest honest action and stop there. If the answer is no, release it back to its proper hour. Do not keep paying interest on a debt that is not due tonight. Do not keep feeding a fire that does not need your hands until morning. Do not let the mind convince you that rest is dangerous. Because after tonight, you are learning a different way. You are learning that peace is not the reward for having no problems. Peace is the discipline of not turning every problem into your whole identity. You are learning that an unfinished life is still allowed to sleep. You are learning that tomorrow does not become better because you suffered through the night. It becomes better when you arrive with steadier breath, clearer thought, and a mind that has not spent all its strength fighting shadows. Let the unfinished remain unfinished for now. Let the unsolved stay outside the door. Let the mind stop acting like a tired soldier guarding a battlefield that has gone quiet. You have done what this hour allows. The rest belongs to morning, and morning with its light and its clearer judgment will know what to do with what the night was never meant to carry. And when the mind finally learns that not every unfinished problem belongs to the night, another deeper truth begins to appear. Some of the weight you carry is not from what still needs to be done. Some of it comes from arguing with what cannot be undone. The mind keeps returning to the same scene, the same words, the same mistake, the same loss, trying to make the past behave differently. But the past does not move. Only you keep moving around it, growing more tired each time. There is a pain that gets heavier every time you ask yesterday to become fair. This is one of the quietest ways the mind exhausts itself, not by facing what happened, but by fighting the fact that it happened at all. You lie down at night and the memory returns, not gently, not as a lesson. It comes as a debate. Why did they do that? Why did I allow it? Why did life turn that way? Why didn't I speak sooner? Why didn't I know better? And before sleep can reach you, you are back inside a moment that has already ended, trying to win an argument with time. The Stoics understood that the heaviest suffering often begins after the event is over. The event may have lasted 1 hour, 1 day, 1 season, or 1 painful chapter. But the mind can keep extending it for years by resisting reality. This does not mean what happened was acceptable. It does not mean the pain was small. It does not mean you should pretend it did not matter. It means there is a difference between acknowledging the wound and reopening it every night to ask why it exists. When you argue with what has already happened, your mind is trying to do something impossible. It is trying to change a fixed thing with fresh pain. It is trying to use regret as a tool, anger as a weapon, and overthinking as a time machine. But none of these can edit yesterday. They can only drain today. They can only make the body tense, the heart restless, and the night heavier than it needs to be. This is why emotional weight increases. Every time you resist the past, you add another layer to it. First, there is the original pain. Then there is anger that it happened. Then there is shame that you are still affected by it. Then there is frustration that you cannot stop thinking about it. Then there is fear that you will never be free from it. What began as one wound becomes a whole burden because the mind keeps building around it. A Stoic would not tell you to deny your feelings. That would not be wisdom. That would be avoidance wearing a serious face. Stoicism is not about becoming stone. It is about seeing clearly. And clarity begins with this. What happened belongs to the past, but your relationship with it is still being formed tonight. You cannot choose the event now, but you can choose whether your mind continues to kneel before it as if it still has the final say over your peace. Many people believe acceptance means agreement. They think accepting the past means saying, "It was okay." But that is not true. Acceptance does not say the pain was right. Acceptance says, "This happened, and I will stop destroying myself trying to make it unhappen." Acceptance is not approval. It is the end of useless resistance. It is the moment you stop pouring your life force into a locked door. There is a deep freedom in admitting, "I wish it had been different, but it was not." That sentence may hurt at first, because it removes the fantasy that the mind has been using to survive. The fantasy of a different ending, a better apology, a wiser choice, a softer goodbye, a fairer outcome. But once the fantasy softens, something else becomes possible. You begin to return to the life that is still here. You begin to recover energy that has been trapped in a battle with what cannot move. Night makes this battle stronger because the mind has fewer distractions. During the day you can avoid the argument, but at night the heart brings the old evidence back to the surface. It wants justice. It wants meaning. It wants someone to admit what was done. It wants the past to become gentle before it lets you sleep. But sometimes the past will never become gentle. Sometimes the people who hurt you will never explain themselves. Sometimes the apology will not come. Sometimes the version of life you wanted will remain a closed road. And still, you must be allowed to rest. This is not weakness. This is survival becoming wisdom. The Stoic path asks you to stop giving your peace to things that have no power to return it. The past cannot comfort you. The past cannot hold you. The past cannot come back and say, "Now I understand what I did to you." But the present can hold you. The present can breathe with you. The present can give you one quiet choice: to stop adding new suffering to old suffering. There is a simple question that can soften the mind before sleep. Am I learning from this, or am I only fighting it? Learning has movement. Fighting the past has none. Learning says, what did this teach me about boundaries, patience, courage, self-respect, truth, or love? Fighting says, why did it happen this way, again and again, with no answer that can satisfy the wound? Learning turns pain into maturity. Fighting turns pain into a prison. When you keep arguing with what already happened, you also keep giving the past a living room inside your body. Your shoulders tighten. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your jaw holds words you never said. Your chest carries conversations that no one else is having anymore. The body does not always know that the event is over. It responds to your thoughts as if the scene is happening again. This is why one memory can make you feel tired, even while you are lying still. So tonight, the practice is not to force yourself to forget. Forced forgetting is another form of fighting. The practice is to stop debating with the memory. Let it appear, but do not enter the courtroom. Let the scene rise, but do not become the lawyer, the judge, the witness, and the victim all over again. You can say, yes, this happened. Yes, it hurt. Yes, I wish it had been different, but I will not spend this night trying to rewrite what time has already sealed. That kind of inner statement is not small. It is a turning point. It tells the mind that you are no longer available for endless emotional trial. You are no longer willing to punish yourself because life did not unfold with perfect mercy. You are no longer willing to use the night as a place to reopen every old verdict. Some memories may still carry grief. Let them. Some disappointments may still feel tender. Let them. Some losses may still ache when the room is silent. Let them. But do not turn every ache into an argument. A feeling can be allowed without being obeyed. A memory can be honored without being repeated. A wound can be real without becoming the ruler of your sleep. The Stoics would remind you that time is not under your command, but your attention can be trained. And attention is powerful. Whatever you keep feeding becomes heavier. Whatever you keep debating becomes louder. Whatever you keep resisting becomes more central in the mind. But whatever you observe with calm begins to lose its grip. Not immediately, not dramatically, but steadily, like a knot loosening under patient hands. Tonight, you do not need to solve the past. You do not need to make every painful chapter make sense before your eyes close. You do not need to understand why people chose what they chose, why life allowed what it allowed, or why you had to carry what you carried. Some answers may come later, some may never come, but your rest cannot depend on the cooperation of yesterday. Let this be the night you stop asking the past to become different before you allow yourself peace. Let this be the night you stop standing in front of a closed door, demanding it open backward. Let this be the night you place your hand on your own heart and say, I cannot change what happened, but I can stop letting it happen again inside me. Because that is what the argument does. It repeats the event internally. It gives old pain a new stage. It makes the mind suffer not only from memory, but from resistance to memory. And once you see this clearly, you can begin to choose differently. You can choose to breathe instead of debate. You can choose to soften instead of tighten. You can choose to return to the bed beneath you, the night around you, the body asking for mercy. You can choose to let the past remain where it is, not because it was fair, not because it was painless, but because you are tired of carrying it into every quiet hour. And as you stop arguing with what has already happened, something inside you begins to settle. The mind does not become empty, but it becomes less hostile. The memory does not vanish, but it loses its throne. The past does not change, but your posture toward it does. You are no longer wrestling with a shadow. You are no longer begging time to reverse itself. You are here, breathing, still alive, still becoming, still allowed to rest. And tonight, that is enough. And when you stop arguing with what has already happened, something tender begins to open inside you. You start to see that not every pain deserves another hour of your life. Not every memory deserves the warmth of your attention. Not every fear deserves to be carried into bed like a sacred duty. Some things happened. Some things hurt. Some things were unfair. But tonight, you are allowed to say the sentence your tired heart has been waiting to hear. This does not need my pain tonight. There is a quiet power in refusing to suffer again for something that has already taken enough from you. At first, that sentence may feel strange, maybe even wrong, because the mind has been trained to believe that if something matters, you must keep hurting over it. If someone disappointed you, you must keep replaying it. If you made a mistake, you must keep punishing yourself. If the future is uncertain, you must keep worrying. If life has been hard, you must keep proving that you understand how hard it was by carrying the heaviness everywhere you go. But the Stoic mind asks a deeper question. Does your pain improve this situation tonight? Not does it prove you care. Not does it prove you are serious. Not does it prove you remember. But does it help? Does it repair the past? Does it change another person's heart? Does it make tomorrow clearer? Does it make your body stronger? Does it bring wisdom, or does it only bring exhaustion? This is where many people begin to wake up, because they realize that much of what they call caring is actually suffering without direction. It is pain with no task, pain with no healing, pain with no movement, just the same wound being touched again and again, because the mind is afraid that letting go means becoming careless. But peace is not carelessness. Peace is the highest form of inner order. When you say, "This does not need my pain tonight," you are not saying the issue is small. You are not saying the person did not matter. You are not saying the loss was easy. You are not saying the mistake had no consequence. You are saying, my suffering is not the solution. You are saying, I can honor this without feeding it. You are saying, I can remember without bleeding. You are saying, I can be responsible without turning my nervous system into a sacrifice. That is a powerful kind of maturity. The Stoics believed that the mind must learn what belongs to it and what does not. Your choices belong to you. Your judgments belong to you. Your next action belongs to you. Your character belongs to you. But the past does not belong to your control. Other people's opinions do not belong to your command. Tomorrow's hidden events do not belong to your hands. What someone finally understands, regrets, confesses, or refuses to see does not belong to you. So why give your pain to what cannot receive it? That is one of the saddest things the mind does at night. It pours pain into places that cannot answer back. It gives pain to a person who is not in the room. It gives pain to a mistake that has already become history. It gives pain to an outcome that has not yet arrived. It gives pain to an old version of life that cannot be revived. And then it wonders why it feels empty. Pain is costly. It takes breath. It takes softness. It takes sleep. It takes patience. It takes the small joy you could have felt in a quiet moment. It takes the warmth from your body and turns your own thoughts into a cold room. So before you give pain to anything tonight, pause and ask, is this worthy of the price? Some things need your action, but not your agony. Some things need your attention, but not your collapse. Some things need your honesty, but not your self-destruction. Some things need to be handled tomorrow, but not worshipped tonight. This distinction can change your entire inner life. A bill may need a plan. It does not need your panic at midnight. A conversation may need courage. It does not need hours of imaginary arguments before sleep. A mistake may need correction. It does not need you calling yourself names in the dark. A loss may need grief. It does not need you denying yourself every moment of peace as proof that you loved deeply. A betrayal may need boundaries. It does not need your mind replaying the scene until your body forgets what safety feels like. This is the difference between pain that teaches and pain that repeats. Pain that teaches brings clarity. It says, now you know. Pain that repeats brings heaviness. It says, live here again. Pain that teaches helps you choose better. Pain that repeats makes you afraid to choose at all. Pain that teaches strengthens your judgment. Pain that repeats steals the night and gives you nothing new. So tonight, when an old burden comes close, you can meet it differently. You do not need to shout at it. You do not need to force it away. You do not need to pretend you are above it. You can simply look at it with tired honesty and say, you have already had enough of me. You do not get my pain tonight. That sentence is not anger, it is protection. It is the mind finally standing at the doorway of your peace and deciding what is allowed to enter. It is the soul saying, I am not a public road for every old hurt to travel through. It is the body saying, I have carried enough tension today. It is the heart saying, I can care and still be quiet. Many people do not understand this. They believe pain is loyalty. They think that if they stop hurting, they are dishonoring what happened. But sometimes the greatest honor you can give to your life is to stop letting one chapter consume the whole book. Sometimes the strongest proof that you learned from pain is that you no longer allow it to lead you like a master. The Stoics did not measure strength by how much suffering a person could display. They measured strength by self-command. Can you feel anger without becoming cruel? Can you feel fear without becoming a servant to it? Can you feel sadness without building a home inside it? Can you face what happened without giving it the rest of your life? That is the quiet power we are speaking of, not the loud power that needs applause, not the power that proves itself to other people, not the power that pretends nothing hurts, but the hidden power of a person lying in the dark, breathing slowly and choosing not to add more pain to pain. That kind of power may not be seen by anyone, but it changes everything inside you. Because each time you say, "This does not need my pain tonight," you train the mind to stop confusing suffering with responsibility. You train the heart to stop offering itself as payment for every problem. You train the body to stop bracing for battles that are not happening in this moment. You teach your inner world that peace is allowed even when life is unfinished. And this matters because life will always be unfinished in some way. There will always be a question waiting, a task undone, a memory that could return, a person you do not fully understand, a situation you wish had gone differently. If you wait until everything is settled before you rest, rest will always be delayed. If you wait until every pain has explained itself before you breathe deeply, your breath will always be held hostage. So the practice is not to wait for a perfect life. The practice is to stop giving unnecessary pain to an imperfect one. Tonight, let that sentence become a small lantern in the mind. When regret rises, say it gently. "This does not need my pain tonight." When fear begins to rehearse tomorrow, say it again. "This does not need my pain tonight." When an old conversation tries to pull you back into defense, whisper it inwardly. "This does not need my pain tonight." When guilt tries to convince you that rest must be earned through suffering, answer with calm authority. "This does not need my pain tonight." The more you repeat it, the more the mind begins to understand. Not every thought gets your energy. Not every memory gets your night. Not every concern gets access to your body. Not every wound gets to decide whether you sleep. And slowly, the pressure begins to loosen. The chest softens. The jaw releases. The shoulders remember they are not meant to carry invisible stones. The breath becomes less afraid. The mind, still imperfect but less crowded, begins to trust that it does not have to solve every pain by becoming pain. This is where sleep begins to feel possible. Not because everything is fixed, but because you have stopped feeding what cannot be fixed tonight. You have stopped placing your peace on the altar of things outside your control. You have stopped treating suffering as a duty. And as the night holds you, you begin to understand something simple but life-changing. Some things may deserve a plan. Some may deserve a boundary. Some may deserve a conversation. Some may deserve time. But not everything deserves your pain. Not tonight. Tonight your pain is not required. Tonight your suffering is not the price of being responsible. Tonight your heart is allowed to care quietly without carrying the whole world in its hands. And when that truth settles deep enough, the mind becomes less like a storm and more like a room after the guests have left. Still, open, quiet, finally yours again. And when the mind learns that not everything deserves your pain tonight, another kind of freedom begins to open. You start to notice that many of the things you carry are not real responsibilities. They are only fear wearing the mask of duty. They are not tasks life has placed in your hands. They are imagined outcomes your mind keeps trying to manage, control, prevent, or predict. And this is where so much heaviness begins. When you confuse what is yours to do with what was never yours to command. There is a hidden exhaustion that comes from trying to control what only time can reveal. You may not call it control. Most people do not. They call it caring. They call it being prepared. They call it thinking ahead. They call it being responsible. But deep inside, the body knows the difference. Real responsibility gives you direction. Imaginary control gives you pressure. Real responsibility says, take the next honest step. Imaginary control says, make sure nothing ever goes wrong. Real responsibility keeps you grounded in action. Imaginary control traps you in fear. This is why the mind feels so heavy before sleep. It does not simply think about what needs to be done. It tries to reach beyond the present and control the entire story. It wants to know how tomorrow will unfold. It wants to manage how people will respond. It wants to prevent disappointment before disappointment even exists. It wants to rehearse every possible problem so nothing can catch you unprepared. But the mind was never built to carry that much. It can guide your choices, but it cannot govern the universe. The Stoics understood this with painful clarity. They taught that peace begins when a person separates what is within their power from what is not. This sounds simple, but it is one of the hardest things to practice, especially at night, because when the heart is tired, it wants certainty. It wants guarantees. It wants to know that if it worries enough, plans enough, fears enough, and stays awake long enough, life will become safe. But life does not obey worry. Life does not become predictable because you suffer over it. Life does not become kind because you exhaust yourself trying to control every edge of it. Real responsibility is calm, even when it is serious. It may ask you to apologize. It may ask you to set a boundary. It may ask you to make a plan, save money, protect your health, answer a message, finish a task, or prepare for a difficult conversation. But once the action has been taken, or once the right hour for action has not yet arrived, responsibility knows how to step back. It does not keep shaking the locked door. It does not keep digging into the future with bare hands. It does not demand that the body pay for problems the mind cannot solve tonight. Imaginary control is different. It never feels finished. Even after you do what you can, it whispers, "But what if it is not enough?" Even after you prepare, it says, "But what if something still goes wrong?" Even after you explain yourself, it says, "But what if they misunderstand you?" Even after you make a choice, it says, "But what if another choice would have been better?" This is how imaginary control steals rest. It moves the finish line every time you get close to peace. A person living under imaginary control does not only handle life, they try to manage everyone's interpretation of their life. They want to be seen correctly, understood fully, forgiven quickly, loved consistently, and protected from every possible loss. But no human being has that kind of power. You can speak honestly, but you cannot force understanding. You can love deeply, but you cannot control loyalty. You can prepare wisely, but you cannot remove uncertainty. You can act with integrity, but you cannot command the result. And when the mind refuses to accept this, heaviness grows. Because now you are not only carrying your own choices, you are carrying other people's reactions. You are carrying possible futures. You are carrying imagined judgments. You are carrying outcomes that have not arrived. You are carrying conversations that have not happened. You are carrying fears that may never become real. This is not responsibility. This is the mind trying to become the ruler of things that belong to life, time, and other people. The Stoic way is not to become passive. It is not to say, "Nothing matters, so I will do nothing." That is not wisdom. That is surrender without character. The Stoic way is to act where action is yours and release where control is not. It is to say, "My effort belongs to me. The result does not fully belong to me. My honesty belongs to me. Their response does not belong to me. My discipline belongs to me. The timing of life does not belong to me." This is where the mind begins to breathe again. Before sleep, one of the most powerful questions you can ask is, what is truly mine here? Not what do I fear, not what could happen, not what do I wish I could control, but what is truly mine. If there is something honest to do, name it. If there is no wise action available tonight, name that too. Sometimes the answer is, what is mine is to rest, so I can meet tomorrow with strength. Sometimes what is mine is not another hour of thinking. It is the humility to stop pretending that thought alone can control the world. This humility is not defeat, it is relief. It is the relief of letting people be responsible for their own choices. It is the relief of letting tomorrow carry tomorrow's weight. It is the relief of letting the past remain where it is. It is the relief of letting your body stop bracing against outcomes that are not in the room. It is the relief of admitting, I am human. I can do my part, but I cannot hold everything together by force. Many people are tired because they have made themselves emotionally responsible for things they can influence but cannot control. You can encourage someone, but you cannot make them change. You can raise a concern, but you cannot make another person receive it with maturity. You can be kind, but you cannot guarantee that kindness will be returned. You can plan carefully, but you cannot promise that every detail will unfold as expected. Influence is real. Control is limited. Wisdom knows the difference. This difference matters because when you confuse influence with control, you blame yourself for things that were never fully yours. If someone rejects your truth, you blame your words. If someone mistreats you, you blame your worth. If something fails, you blame your entire identity. If life delays a desire, you blame your timing, your value, your strength, your future. But not every outcome is a verdict on you. Not every disappointment is proof that you failed. Sometimes it is simply life moving through factors you could not command. Tonight, let the mind return to the boundary of its own power. This boundary is not a prison, it is a shelter. Inside it, you can choose your attitude. You can choose your next step. You can choose patience. You can choose honesty. You can choose restraint. You can choose rest. Outside it, there are other people's thoughts, future events, hidden timing, past decisions, and the countless movements of life that no amount of worry can fully govern. When you stay inside what is yours, the mind becomes lighter, not because life becomes easy, but because you stop carrying life as if you are its only support. You stop treating every uncertainty as a personal failure. You stop believing that your peace must wait until every person, outcome, and possibility behaves the way you want. You stop confusing vigilance with wisdom. So tonight, take back your energy from imaginary control. Take it back from the future you keep rehearsing. Take it back from the people you keep trying to mentally convince. Take it back from the outcome you keep gripping. Take it back from the fear that says, if I stop worrying, everything will fall apart. No, everything will not fall apart because you allowed yourself to sleep. And if something still needs to be handled tomorrow, a rested mind will handle it better than a frightened one. Say to yourself gently, I will do what is mine. I will release what is not. Let that become the line between peace and pressure. Let it become the door you close before sleep. Let it become the quiet law of the night. You are not responsible for controlling every result. You are responsible for meeting life with character. You are not responsible for carrying every possibility. You are responsible for the next right action. You are not responsible for forcing tomorrow to be safe before it arrives. You are responsible for giving yourself enough rest to face it wisely. And as this truth settles, the burden begins to separate. What is yours becomes clear and manageable. What is not yours begins to fall away. The mind no longer has to act like a tired god over every detail of life. It can become human again, present again, humble again, quiet again. And in that quiet, sleep comes closer. Not because every outcome is secured, but because your soul finally understands that it was never asked to carry the whole world. And when you finally separate real responsibility from the burden of imaginary control, another painful habit becomes easier to see. The mind does not only try to control tomorrow, sometimes it tries to control yesterday. It reaches backward into what has already happened, rearranging words, changing choices, editing scenes, and building 1,000 versions of how things should have gone. But every attempt leaves you more tired, because yesterday is not a page the mind can rewrite. It is a stone already placed in time. There is a deep exhaustion that comes from trying to repair the past with thoughts. You know the feeling. The day is over. The room is quiet. Your body wants peace. But suddenly, the mind pulls you backward. It takes you to a conversation where you wish you had spoken differently. It takes you to a moment where you wish you had noticed the sign earlier. It takes you to a choice you now understand better than you did then. It takes you to a person you trusted, a chance you missed, a warning you ignored, or a version of yourself you now judge with the wisdom you did not have at the time. And then the editing begins. You say the words you should have said. You walk away when you should have walked away. You stand up for yourself with perfect timing. You avoid the mistake. You choose the better road. You see the truth earlier. You become brave sooner. In your mind, you return to the scene with new strength, new wisdom, new courage, and new knowledge. But when the scene ends, nothing in the past has changed. Only your present peace has been spent. This is why the mind becomes exhausted. It is doing work that cannot be completed. It is carrying a task with no finish line. The body feels like it is lying still, but inside, the mind is running through old rooms, moving furniture in a house that no longer exists. It keeps trying to create a better yesterday, hoping that if it thinks hard enough, the pain will soften. But the past does not soften because you keep rewriting it. The past softens when you stop asking it to become something else before you allow yourself rest. The Stoics understood that suffering grows when the mind refuses the nature of time. Time moves forward. Human thought can look backward, but it cannot live there without paying a price. Reflection is useful when it brings wisdom into the present, but rewriting is different. Reflection says, "What can I learn from this?" Rewriting says, "How can I make this not have happened?" Reflection gives you strength. Rewriting gives you fatigue. Reflection brings the lesson home. Rewriting keeps the soul trapped at the scene. This difference matters deeply. A wise person does not ignore yesterday. They study it. They learn from it. They take what is useful. They notice where they were blind, where they were afraid, where they gave too much, where they stayed too long, where they acted too quickly, where they failed to protect their peace. But after learning, they return to the present. They do not keep sitting inside the ashes, asking the fire to burn differently. Many people are not haunted by the past itself. They are haunted by the belief that they should have known then what they know now. This belief is cruel because it expects an older mind to judge a younger self without mercy. It forgets that the person you were did not have the full map. That version of you had limited information, limited strength, limited support, limited experience, and perhaps a heart that was still hoping for the best. You may see everything clearly now, but that clarity was born from what happened. You cannot use the wisdom gained from the wound to condemn the person who was wounded before the wisdom arrived. That is not justice. That is self-punishment. The Stoic path asks for honesty without cruelty. Yes, perhaps you made mistakes. Yes, perhaps you trusted wrongly. Yes, perhaps you spoke too little, stayed too long, reacted too strongly, or ignored something important. But the question is not, how do I shame myself enough to erase this? The question is, how do I become wiser without becoming my own enemy? Shame does not rewrite yesterday. It only darkens tonight. Guilt may point to something that needs correction, but once the correction is understood, endless guilt becomes useless weight. The mind keeps trying to rewrite yesterday because it believes the pain will finally make sense if it can find the perfect explanation. It thinks, if I can understand every detail, maybe I can stop hurting. But sometimes healing does not come from understanding every detail. Sometimes healing comes from accepting that, even without a perfect explanation, you are still allowed to move forward. You are allowed to say, I do not know why it happened that way, but I know I cannot keep giving my life to the question. This is not giving up, it is returning to yourself. At night, the mind often becomes a historian of pain. It archives every regret. It replays every disappointment. It searches for evidence that you could have prevented what happened. But life is not always that simple. Some outcomes were shaped by other people's choices. Some losses came from timing. Some disappointments came from hidden truths you did not yet see. Some mistakes came from being human, not from being worthless. You are not responsible for knowing everything before life teaches it to you. The more you accept this, the less your mind needs to keep editing old scenes. You begin to understand that the goal is not to create a perfect past. The goal is to create a freer relationship with the past you actually have. You do not need a different yesterday to become peaceful tonight. You need a gentler way of holding the yesterday that exists. This is where a simple Stoic practice can help before sleep. When the mind starts rewriting, pause and name what is happening. Say inwardly, this is not repair, this is replay. That one sentence brings light into the cycle. It reminds you that your thoughts may look productive, but they are not changing anything. Then ask, what lesson belongs to today? Do not ask for a full explanation. Do not ask for a perfect ending. Ask only for the lesson. Maybe the lesson is to trust actions more than words. Maybe the lesson is to rest sooner. Maybe the lesson is to speak honestly. Maybe the lesson is to forgive yourself. Maybe the lesson is to stop calling self-abandonment love. Once the lesson is received, let the scene close. Not because it never mattered, not because you are suddenly above pain, but because a lesson does not need to be dug up every night to remain useful. A seed does not grow faster because you keep pulling it from the soil. Wisdom does not become deeper because you keep punishing yourself with the memory that created it. Let the lesson live in you quietly. Let it guide you without haunting you. The past can become a teacher or a prison, depending on how you return to it. If you return with curiosity, it teaches. If you return with hatred toward yourself, it imprisons. If you return to gather wisdom, it strengthens you. If you return to accuse yourself, it drains you. If you return briefly and come back to the present, you grow. If you stay there all night, you lose the peace that could have restored you. Tonight, you do not need to be the person you wish you had been yesterday. You only need to be the person who is willing to learn now. That is enough. Growth does not require you to hate who you were. It requires you to understand who you were, forgive what was human, correct what can still be corrected, and carry forward what wisdom has made clear. There is a quiet mercy in admitting, I cannot rewrite that day, but I can stop letting that day write me. This is where the heaviness begins to lift. The mind no longer has to keep running backward with a pen in its hand, trying to change lines already dried in time. It can come home. It can sit down. It can breathe. It can accept that the past has a place, but it does not own the whole house. So when yesterday rises tonight, do not wrestle with it. Do not chase the perfect version. Do not enter the old scene hoping to become stronger there. You are stronger here. You are wiser here. You are alive here. The only place your peace can be practiced is here. Let yesterday remain a teacher, not a master. Let regret become instruction, not punishment. Let memory become a quiet witness, not a loud ruler. You cannot change what happened, but you can change how much of your life it is still allowed to consume. And as the night deepens, let the mind stop editing what time has already sealed. Let the body stop carrying the tension of old decisions. Let the heart stop asking for a doorway back into what cannot be entered again. You are not here to rewrite yesterday. You are here to receive enough peace to meet tomorrow differently. And when the mind stops trying to rewrite yesterday, it becomes ready for a softer kind of wisdom. Because much of the night's heaviness comes from one quiet demand. The demand to understand everything before you rest. The mind wants clean answers, it wants reasons, it wants certainty, it wants every loose end tied before the eyes close. But life does not always explain itself by bedtime, and if you wait for perfect answers before you allow peace, the day may never truly end. There is a tired part of you that does not need another explanation tonight. It needs permission to stop searching. This is where the Stoic practice of closing the day begins. Not by pretending the day was easy. Not by forcing yourself to feel calm. Not by denying the questions still sitting inside you. But by deciding that the mind does not have to chase every answer into the dark. Some questions are not meant to be solved while the body is exhausted. Some answers are not hidden because you are failing. They are simply not ready. They may need time. They may need distance. They may need morning light. They may need a calmer version of you. But the restless mind does not like waiting. It says, "Why did that happen? What did they mean? What should I do next? What if I choose wrong? What if this never changes? What if I missed something important?" And because the night is quiet, each question sounds heavier than it really is. The mind begins to believe that sleep must be delayed until every answer appears. But this is a trap, because not every question becomes clearer the longer you stare at it. Some questions become darker. The Stoics understood that peace is not found in having all answers. Peace is found in ordering the soul around what is true, useful, and within your power. At the end of the day, the question is not, "Do I understand everything?" The question is, "Have I done what this day reasonably asked of me?" That is different. That is gentler. That is human. Maybe you did not handle everything perfectly. Maybe you spoke too quickly. Maybe you stayed silent when you should have spoken. Maybe you worried more than you wanted. Maybe you carried a mood you could not shake. Maybe you failed to finish something you promised yourself you would complete. But closing the day does not require perfection. It requires honesty without violence against yourself. A Stoic closing of the day might sound like this. What was mine to do today? What did I do well? Where did I fall short? What can I learn? What must I leave to time? Simple questions, clear questions, questions that bring order, not panic. They do not drag you into endless self-punishment. They do not demand that you become a perfect person before morning. They only help you gather the day, take the lesson, and set down the rest. This is important because many people do not close the day. They collapse under it. They carry the whole day into bed still open, still loud, still unfinished. Every conversation remains active. Every mistake remains fresh. Every worry remains waiting. It is like leaving every door in the house open and then wondering why the night does not feel safe. To close the day is to walk through the inner house and gently say, "This is enough for now. This room can be quiet. This thought can wait. This burden does not need my full attention tonight." The mind needs rituals of completion. It needs signals that the work of the day is done, even if the work of life is not. Without those signals, the mind keeps reaching. It keeps scanning. It keeps asking for more. More clarity, more certainty, more control, more proof that everything will be okay. But the soul cannot rest when the mind is always demanding one more answer. This is why perfect answers are dangerous at night. Not because answers are bad, but because the demand for perfect answers becomes another form of control. You may believe you are seeking wisdom, but sometimes you are seeking emotional safety through certainty. You want to know exactly how things will unfold, so you do not have to feel afraid. You want to understand every person's motive, so you do not have to feel confused. You want a complete explanation for every pain, so you do not have to feel the helplessness of being human. But the Stoics would remind you that life does not give complete explanations for everything. Some things are understood only after years. Some things are never fully understood, only survived with dignity. Some people's choices remain unclear. Some losses never become fair. Some delays never explain themselves. And still, your character can remain steady. Your breath can return. Your night can close. There is power in saying, "I do not know, and I can still rest." That sentence may feel small, but it breaks a deep pattern. It tells the mind that uncertainty is not danger. It tells the body that unanswered questions are not emergencies. It tells the soul that peace does not depend on knowing everything. You can be incomplete and still be safe. You can be uncertain and still be grounded. You can be waiting and still be worthy of sleep. The practice is not to push questions away with force. Force creates resistance. The practice is to give them a place. If a question matters, write it down for morning. If a decision needs attention, leave one simple note for your future self. If a conversation needs courage, name the first honest step. Then stop. Do not let the question multiply until it becomes a crowd. Do not let one concern become 20. Do not let the mind turn the bed into a council meeting where fear is allowed to speak all night. Closing the day also means forgiving the limits of the day. This is not laziness, it is wisdom. Every day has a limit to what it can hold. You cannot place a whole lifetime of healing inside one evening. You cannot repair every relationship in one night. You cannot understand every wound because the lights are off and the world is still. You cannot demand from a tired mind what only time, rest, and maturity can reveal. Sometimes the most stoic thing you can do is stop asking the wrong hour for the right answer. Night is not always the hour for solutions. Night is often the hour for surrender. Not surrender as defeat, but surrender as order. You are saying, "This belongs to action later. This belongs to reflection later. This belongs to time. This belongs to something beyond my control. But this body belongs to rest now." That is not giving up on life. That is returning life to its proper rhythm. A person who cannot close the day becomes a servant to unfinished thoughts. They wake up already tired because they never truly put yesterday down. They move through life with the mind always half open, always checking, always reviewing, always searching for the missing answer that will finally make them feel safe. But safety built on perfect certainty is fragile, because life is uncertain by nature. The deeper safety is learning to remain steady without having the full picture. This is what Stoic rest teaches. It teaches the mind to live with open questions without becoming an open wound. It teaches the heart to carry mystery without turning it into fear. It teaches the body that it can sleep even while some things remain unresolved. It teaches the soul that closure is not always receiving an answer. Sometimes closure is deciding that the question no longer has permission to steal the night. So, as this day comes to an end, gather it gently. Do not drag it. Do not judge every part of it. Do not demand that it explain itself. Look at what happened. Take the lesson that is clear. Leave what is unclear to time. Thank yourself for surviving what no one else saw. Forgive yourself for the moments you were not perfect. Return your attention to the breath, to the bed, to the quiet truth that this one day is finished. You do not need perfect answers tonight. You need a clean stopping place. Let the mind hear that again. A clean stopping place. A place where the questions can rest without being solved. A place where your heart is not required to keep searching. A place where the day is allowed to be incomplete without becoming a threat. A place where you can say, I have taken what wisdom I can from this day. I release the rest until morning. And when the mind asks one more question, as it often will, answer softly, not tonight. When it brings another concern, say, this can wait. When it demands certainty, say, peace does not require certainty. When it tries to reopen the day, say, the day is closed. There is no need to fight. There is only the gentle authority of a soul that has decided the night will not be used for endless searching. And as you close the day without demanding perfect answers, the mind begins to trust the ending. The heart stops reaching into the dark for explanations. The body begins to understand that rest is allowed before life is fully understood. The unanswered questions remain, but they no longer stand over you like masters. They become quiet objects on the shore of tomorrow, waiting for a clearer hour. Tonight, you do not need to know everything. You only need to return to yourself. You only need to let this day end. And once you learn to close the day without demanding perfect answers, another hidden wound begins to show itself. It is the harsh voice inside you that says, you should have done more by now. You should have healed faster. You should have solved the problem sooner. You should have moved on already. You should have become stronger, calmer, wiser, more successful, more certain, more complete. And because life is not moving at the speed your fear demands, you begin to punish yourself for still being in process. There is a kind of pain that does not come from failure, but from being cruel to yourself while you are still trying. You may not notice it at first. It sounds like discipline. It sounds like responsibility. It sounds like ambition. It says, why are you still struggling with this? Why have you not fixed your life yet? Why are you still tired? Why are you still affected? Why are you not over it? And because the voice sounds serious, you mistake it for truth. But not every serious voice inside you is wise. Some voices are only fear dressed in authority. The Stoic path does not ask you to become passive. It does not ask you to sit back and let life fall apart. It does not tell you to ignore what needs to be repaired. Stoicism asks you to act with courage, patience, reason, and self-command. But nowhere does it ask you to become your own punishment. Nowhere does it say that progress must be hated into existence. Nowhere does it say that the soul becomes lighter by being beaten every night for not arriving quickly enough. Growth has its own pace. Healing has its own pace. Understanding has its own pace. A wound does not close faster because you insult it. A tired mind does not become clear because you shame it. A fearful heart does not become brave because you threaten it. Some things inside you need discipline, yes, but discipline is not the same as cruelty. Discipline says, take the next step. Cruelty says, you are worthless until the whole road is finished. This is why the mind feels so heavy when you punish yourself for not fixing everything fast enough. You take a real problem and then you add self-attack on top of it. The problem is already difficult, but now you have made yourself the enemy too. You are not only carrying the bill, the grief, the confusion, the delay, the responsibility, the hard conversation, or the uncertain future. You are also carrying the belief that you are bad because these things are not already resolved. That belief is what makes the burden heavier than it needs to be. A Stoic would ask, what is actually within your control in this moment? Not your entire future, not the speed of every outcome, not the emotional timeline of your healing, not how quickly other people understand you, not how fast life becomes simple. What is within your control is smaller, but stronger. Your next honest action, your judgment, your patience, your willingness to continue, your refusal to turn delay into self-hatred. Many people are not suffering only because life is unfinished. They are suffering because they believe unfinished means unacceptable. They think being in progress means being behind. They think needing time means being weak. They think struggling with the same emotional weight means they have failed to learn. But this is not true. Sometimes the same lesson returns because it is deep. Sometimes healing takes longer because the wound touched more than one part of your life. Sometimes you are not slow. You are simply rebuilding something that was damaged for a long time. You cannot demand instant peace from a mind that has spent years learning tension. You cannot demand immediate trust from a heart that has been disappointed. You cannot demand overnight courage from a nervous system that has known fear. You cannot demand perfect calm from a person who has had to survive storms quietly. These things need practice. They need repetition. They need gentleness. They need time. And time is not your enemy. But the mind often turns time into evidence against you. It says, if this still hurts, you have not grown. But sometimes growth is not the absence of pain. Sometimes growth is noticing the pain without letting it control your whole night. Sometimes growth is taking one breath before reacting. Sometimes growth is choosing rest even when worry is present. Sometimes growth is no longer begging people to understand what you now understand about yourself. Sometimes growth is quiet, small, almost invisible, but still real. The world teaches speed. It praises quick success, fast healing, instant transformation, sudden confidence, overnight change. But the soul does not become whole through performance. The soul becomes whole through truth. And truth often moves slowly. It takes time to see what you were blind to. It takes time to forgive what you regret. It takes time to accept what you cannot change. It takes time to stop wanting approval from places that never gave you peace. It takes time to become the kind of person who can rest without feeling guilty. So tonight, stop measuring your progress with a weapon. Do not look at your life like a judge searching for proof of delay. Look at it like a wise gardener. A gardener does not scream at the soil because the seed has not become a tree by morning. A gardener does not dig up the root every night to accuse it of being slow. A gardener waters, waits, protects, and trusts the hidden process. Your inner life also has roots. Some of the deepest changes are happening beneath what you can see. Punishing yourself does not speed up the process. It interrupts it. It keeps the body tense. It makes rest feel undeserved. It makes the mind afraid to look honestly at its own pain, because honesty becomes another place for attack. And when the mind does not feel safe, it hides, it defends, it distracts, it delays. So the very punishment you think will make you stronger may be the thing keeping you stuck. The Stoic practice is different. It asks for firm kindness, firm enough to tell the truth, kind enough to remain on your own side while telling it. You can say, yes, I still need to improve, without saying, I am worthless. You can say, yes, this problem still needs attention, without saying, I am a failure. You can say, yes, I should take action tomorrow, without saying, I do not deserve peace tonight. This is maturity. This is self-command. This is the mind learning to guide itself without violence. Before sleep, try this simple inner separation. There is the problem, and then there is the punishment you add to the problem. The problem may be real. The punishment is optional. The task may be unfinished. The shame is optional. The healing may be slow. The self-hatred is optional. The future may be uncertain. The nightly attack is optional. You may still have work to do, but you do not have to suffer twice before doing it. This does not mean you make excuses. It means you remove the poison from the process. You stop confusing self-respect with self-condemnation. You stop believing that pain is the only language your mind understands. You stop treating yourself like someone who must be threatened into becoming better. You can become better through clarity, through structure, through patience, through repeated small actions, through honest reflection, through rest. Especially rest. Because a tired person often sees their life through a darker lens. At night, when the body is weak and the mind is worn down, your problems may appear larger than they are, and your progress may appear smaller than it is. This is why you must not hold a trial against yourself in the dark. Midnight is not always a fair judge. Exhaustion does not always speak with wisdom. The thoughts that accuse you before sleep may sound convincing, but they are often only the voice of a system that needs recovery. Let morning handle what requires strength. Let daylight handle what requires planning. Let a rested mind decide what needs correction. Tonight is not the hour for self-punishment. Tonight is the hour for release. You can admit that everything is not fixed and still be proud that you are trying. You can admit that you are not where you want to be and still honor how far you have come. You can admit that your heart is still healing and still allow it to rest. You can admit that some problems remain and still refuse to turn yourself into another problem. There is a quiet sentence that can help. I am allowed to be unfinished without being unworthy. Let that settle slowly. You are allowed to be unfinished without being unworthy. Your progress does not need to be perfect to be real. Your healing does not need to be fast to be valid. Your life does not need to be fully repaired before you are allowed to breathe. Tonight, do not ask yourself to fix everything. Ask yourself to stop hurting yourself while you are fixing what you can. That is enough for this hour. That is a strong beginning. That is how the mind becomes less afraid of its own journey. And as the night deepens, let the harsh voice grow quieter. Let the demand for speed soften. Let the pressure to become whole immediately loosen its grip. You are not late to your own healing. You are not failing because you still need time. You are not weak because life is taking longer than you hoped. You are human. You are learning. You are carrying less than you carried before. And even if everything is not fixed tonight, you can still choose not to punish yourself for being on the way. And when you stop punishing yourself for not fixing everything fast enough, you begin to notice one of the mind's oldest habits. It does not simply remember, it judges. It does not simply bring back the past. It puts the past on trial. It calls old scenes forward like witnesses. It questions every choice. It examines every word. It searches for who was wrong, who should have known better, who should have cared more, who should have spoken sooner. And before you know it, memory is no longer a quiet place of learning. It becomes a courtroom where your peace is always on trial. There is a special kind of tiredness that comes from being both the judge and the accused inside your own mind. At night, memories can arrive softly at first. A face, a sentence, a place, a mistake, a moment when something changed. But then the mind begins to build a case around it. It asks, why did I do that? Why did they say that? Why did I not see it coming? Why did I trust them? Why did I let that happen? Soon, the memory is no longer just a memory. It becomes evidence. Evidence against your wisdom. Evidence against your worth. Evidence against your timing. Evidence against your ability to protect yourself. This is where peace begins to disappear. Because memory was never meant to be used only as punishment. Memory has a purpose. It can teach you. It can warn you. It can help you recognize patterns. It can remind you of what matters. It can show you how far you have come. But when memory becomes a courtroom, it stops being a teacher and becomes a prosecutor. It stops asking, what did this teach you? And starts asking, How can we prove you were wrong? That difference changes everything. The Stoics understood that the past itself does not keep hurting us in the same way forever. What keeps hurting is the judgment we attach to it. A memory may say, "This happened," but judgment says, "This means you are foolish." A memory may say, "Someone left," but judgment says, "This proves you were not enough." A memory may say, "You made a mistake," but judgment says, "You should never trust yourself again." The event is one thing. The sentence you keep passing against yourself is another. And many people live for years under sentences they never questioned. They carry a quiet verdict inside them. I failed. I was weak. I was too late. I was not lovable. I ruined it. I should have known. These verdicts become heavy because the mind keeps returning to the same courtroom every night, hoping for a different ruling, but using the same harsh evidence. You cannot find peace in a courtroom where compassion is never allowed to speak. This is why the Stoic practice is not to erase memory. It is to change the way you stand before it. You do not have to run from what happened. You do not have to pretend it was smaller than it was. You do not have to deny the lesson. But you must stop using memory as a place where you beat yourself into becoming better. That kind of inner trial does not create wisdom. It creates fear. A fearful mind may become careful, but it does not become free. When you turn memory into a courtroom, you keep trying to prove something. You try to prove you were right. You try to prove they were wrong. You try to prove you deserved better. You try to prove you were not foolish. You try to prove the pain was real. And sometimes, yes, the pain was real. Sometimes you did deserve better. Sometimes they were wrong. Sometimes you were not treated with fairness. But even when the evidence is clear, the courtroom still keeps you trapped if you never allow the case to close. There comes a point where proving the wound becomes another wound. You may have spent so long defending your pain in your mind that rest begins to feel unsafe. Because if you stop arguing, who will understand what happened? If you stop reviewing, who will hold them accountable? If you stop replaying, will the truth disappear? But truth does not need your sleeplessness to remain true. What happened does not become less real because you choose peace. Someone's wrong does not become right because you stop letting it dominate your night. This is a powerful freedom. You can know the truth without rehearsing it every evening. You can honor your pain without putting it on display inside your own mind again and again. You can admit that something wounded you without making the wound the center of your whole inner world. You can learn from the past without living in permanent testimony. The Stoics would ask you to return to what is useful. Is this memory helping you act with more wisdom now? Or is it only dragging your spirit back into an old trial? Is this reflection giving you clarity? Or is it only strengthening resentment, shame, or fear? Is this thought helping you choose better? Or is it forcing you to suffer through a scene that has already taken enough? These questions matter because not every return to the past is healing. Some returns are only habits. Some are attempts to control what cannot be changed. Some are attempts to gain closure from people who are not present. Some are attempts to punish yourself until you feel you have paid enough for being human. But suffering is not payment. Pain does not buy a better past. Restlessness does not produce justice. Before sleep, the mind needs mercy more than it needs another trial. Mercy does not mean you excuse everything. It means you stop placing your tired heart on the witness stand. It means you stop demanding that your past self answer questions with the wisdom your present self only gained afterward. It means you stop calling memory forward only to accuse it. It means you let what happened be known, learned from, and released from constant judgment. Think of how different it feels to say, That memory is evidence that I failed, compared to, that memory is evidence that I survived and learned. One sentence imprisons you, the other gives you back to yourself. One keeps you ashamed, the other allows maturity. One makes sleep difficult, the other lets the body understand that the danger is no longer happening. The body needs to know this too, because when the mind holds court, the body prepares for battle. The chest tightens as if it must defend itself. The stomach knots as if a verdict is coming. The face holds tension as if it is still trying to explain. The breath becomes shallow because the nervous system does not understand that this is only memory. It feels the accusation as if it is present danger. So tonight, when memory comes, do not immediately become the judge. Do not become the prosecutor. Do not become the accused. Become the witness of your own healing. Let the memory appear, but do not build a courtroom around it. Let it speak, but do not let it sentence you. Let it show you what it needs to show, then let it pass without turning your bed into a place of judgment. You can say, "This happened, and I have learned what I can." You can say, "I was human there." You can say, "I did not know then what I know now." You can say, "Their choice belongs to them, my healing belongs to me." You can say, "This memory does not get to decide the quality of my sleep." There is deep Stoic strength in that kind of inner command. Not harsh command, not cold command, calm command. The kind that says, "My mind is not a courthouse tonight. My heart is not on trial tonight. My past is not the ruler of this room tonight." Peace begins when memory is allowed to become a library instead of a courtroom. A library holds lessons. A courtroom demands punishment. A library lets you take wisdom from the shelf when needed. A courtroom forces you to stand under accusation. A library is quiet. A courtroom is tense. A library helps you grow. A courtroom keeps you defending yourself. Tonight, let your memories become books, not verdicts. Some pages may be sad. Some may be painful. Some may still be difficult to read, but they do not all need to be opened before sleep. They do not all need to be argued over. They do not all need to be explained again. You can close the book gently and still keep the wisdom. You can leave the shelf untouched and still remain honest. You can rest without losing the lesson. This is how peace begins, not by having a perfect past, but by no longer putting your soul on trial because the past was imperfect. Not by forgetting what happened, but by refusing to let memory become a daily punishment. Not by pretending you were never hurt, but by choosing not to turn every remembrance into another injury. As the night settles around you, let the courtroom empty. Let the witnesses go home. Let the judge step down. Let the accusations dissolve into silence. There is nothing more to prove tonight. There is nothing more to defend tonight. There is nothing more to replay until your heart is tired enough to surrender. You are allowed to remember without suffering. You are allowed to learn without self-punishment. You are allowed to close the case. And when memory stops standing over you like a judge, it becomes what it was always meant to be. A teacher that visits, speaks briefly, and leaves you wiser, not wounded. And when memory stops becoming a courtroom, another hidden prisoner begins to step forward. It is guilt. Not always the loud kind. Not always the kind you can explain clearly. Sometimes it is quiet. It follows you through the day without making much noise, then climbs into bed with you when the world becomes still. It reminds you of what you did not do, what you should have said, who you think you disappointed, and where you believe you fell short. There is a heavy sadness in carrying guilt for things your heart was never meant to carry forever. Hidden guilt is difficult because it does not always arrive as a clear sentence. Sometimes it arrives as a feeling in the chest, a tightness in the stomach, a strange restlessness when nothing is actually happening. You lie down, and suddenly your mind begins to search for what you did wrong. It may not even know where to begin, but it feels certain there must be something you failed to fix, someone you failed to please, some version of yourself you failed to become, some responsibility you did not carry perfectly. This is why guilt can be so exhausting at night. It makes the mind feel like it owes a debt it cannot name. The Stoics would not tell you to ignore guilt completely. True guilt can be useful when it points toward correction. If you have harmed someone, guilt may be the first honest signal that something needs repair. It can lead you to apologize, to change your behavior, to become more careful with your words, your choices, your promises, and your character. In that form, guilt is not an enemy. It is a messenger. It says, "Look here, something needs to be made right." But hidden guilt is different. Hidden guilt often remains even after you have learned the lesson. It stays after the apology. It stays after the correction. It stays when there is nothing more to do. It keeps asking for punishment when wisdom has already been received. It does not guide you toward a better action. It keeps you trapped in emotional debt. And any guilt that does not lead to growth eventually becomes a chain. Before sleep, this chain can feel especially strong. The mind begins to say, "You should have done more. You should have known better. You should have been kinder. You should have been stronger. You should have saved them. You should have stopped it. You should have fixed it." But the word "should" can become a cruel master when it ignores what was actually possible at the time. It can demand perfect wisdom from a past version of you that was tired, afraid, confused, uninformed, wounded, or simply human. A Stoic way of releasing guilt begins with a clear question. Is there a real action still required from me, or am I only punishing myself? This question cuts through the fog. If there is a real action, take it when the right time comes. If you need to apologize, plan the apology. If you need to change a habit, choose the first step. If you need to repair what can be repaired, prepare to do it with humility. But if there is no action left, if the only thing you are doing is replaying your failure and calling it responsibility, then guilt has stopped being useful. It has become suffering without purpose. Many people do not release guilt because they believe suffering proves they are sorry. They think, if I stop feeling bad, maybe it means I do not care. But this is not true. You can be sorry without destroying yourself. You can regret something without turning your bed into a punishment room. You can learn deeply without bleeding emotionally every time the memory appears. Remorse should make you more awake, not permanently unworthy of peace. There is a difference between accountability and self-condemnation. Accountability says, "I see what happened. I accept my part. I will do better." Self-condemnation says, "Because this happened, I am bad forever." Accountability helps you grow. Self-condemnation freezes you in shame. Accountability faces the truth and moves forward with character. Self-condemnation keeps the truth as a weapon and uses it against your own heart. The Stoics valued character above comfort, but they also understood that character cannot grow in endless self-hatred. A person who is always attacking themselves does not become wiser. They become fearful. They become hesitant. They become trapped in the old version of themselves because shame keeps dragging them back there. If guilt has taught you the lesson, you do not need to keep sitting under the punishment. The lesson is the treasure. The punishment is not. Sometimes guilt follows you into bed because you have taken responsibility for things that were never fully yours. You may feel guilty for someone else's sadness, guilty for someone else's anger, guilty for not being able to heal another person, guilty for not preventing every disappointment, guilty for needing rest when others still need help, guilty for choosing yourself after years of overgiving. But not every pain around you is proof of your failure. Not every unhappy person is your assignment. Not every broken situation is yours to repair. This is where Stoic boundaries become medicine. You must learn to separate your part from the whole event. Your part may be real, but it may not be everything. Your words may have mattered, but so did theirs. Your choice may have had an effect, but so did time, circumstance, misunderstanding, weakness, fear, and the choices of others. Guilt becomes poisonous when it makes you the center of every outcome. Humility says, I have a part. False guilt says, everything is my fault. Wisdom knows the difference. Before sleep, bring the guilt into the light gently. Do not run from it. Do not drown in it. Ask it what it wants. If it says, make this right, then listen. If it says, learn from this, then listen. But if it only says, suffer again, then you are allowed to answer, no, I have learned what I can. I will not use this night to injure myself. That answer is not arrogance. It is mercy with discipline. You are allowed to forgive the version of you that did not know what you know now. You are allowed to forgive the version of you that was doing their best with a tired mind and a frightened heart. You are allowed to forgive the version of you that stayed too long because hope was stronger than clarity. You are allowed to forgive the version of you that reacted from pain before they knew how to respond from peace. You are allowed to forgive the version of you that was still learning how to be human. Forgiveness does not erase responsibility. It removes the endless whip from your hand. And maybe tonight, that is what your mind needs most. Not another trial, not another long punishment, not another hour of proving you feel bad enough. Maybe your mind needs to hear, I can be accountable and still be kind to myself. Maybe your heart needs to hear, I do not have to keep paying for the same lesson every night. Maybe your body needs to hear, the debt has been recognized, the lesson has been received, the punishment can end. The hidden guilt that follows you into bed often survives because it hides in silence. So speak to it clearly. Say, if there is something to repair, I will repair it with courage. If there is something to learn, I will learn it with humility. But if there is nothing more to do tonight, I release myself from useless suffering. This is a calm and honest prayer of the Stoic mind. It does not deny truth. It puts truth in order. Some guilt may not leave in one night. That is okay. The goal is not to force it away. The goal is to stop feeding it with blind obedience. Let it soften slowly. Let it become information instead of identity. Let it become a teacher instead of a jailer. Let it show you the value of better choices, then let it step aside so peace can enter. Tonight, you do not need to prove your goodness by staying awake in regret. You do not need to punish yourself into becoming better. You do not need to carry every old mistake like a stone against your chest. If amends are needed, make them when the proper hour comes. If growth is needed, commit to it with patience. But this hour, this quiet hour, is not asking for your self-destruction. It is asking for your return. Let the guilt loosen its grip. Let the lesson remain. Let the shame fall away. Let the night remind you that a human being can be imperfect and still worthy of rest. You are not free because you never made mistakes. You become free when you stop using mistakes as proof that peace no longer belongs to you. And as you breathe deeper, let this truth settle inside you. What guilt has taught, guilt no longer needs to punish. What has been learned does not need to be relived. What has been owned does not need to become your identity. You can close your eyes now, not because everything was perfect, but because your heart is finally willing to stop carrying what has already done its work. And once the hidden guilt begins to loosen, the mind becomes ready to see another truth that is easy to miss. Not every thought becomes heavy because it is powerful. Some thoughts become heavy because you keep returning to them. You keep touching them. You keep feeding them with your focus. You keep giving them the warmth of your attention until they grow larger than the truth itself. And then, at night, you wonder why the same thought feels too big to carry. There is a quiet danger in giving your whole mind to a thought that was only meant to pass through. A thought can begin as something small, a sentence, a doubt, a memory, a fear, a question. It enters the mind softly, almost like a passing shadow. But then you turn toward it. You study it. You follow it. You argue with it. You give it meaning. You imagine where it could lead. You ask why it came. You ask what it says about you. You ask what might happen next. And before long, the thought that came as a whisper becomes a weight on your chest. This is how attention works. It is like food for the inner world. What you feed grows. What you keep watching becomes stronger. What you keep rehearsing becomes familiar. And what becomes familiar begins to feel true, even when it is only repeated. This is why the heaviest thoughts are often not the deepest thoughts, but the most fed thoughts. The Stoics understood that a thought is not dangerous simply because it appears. The danger begins when the mind gives it power without examination. A fear appears and the mind says, "This must be a warning." A regret appears and the mind says, "This must mean I am guilty." A memory appears and the mind says, "This must mean I am not healed." But a thought appearing is not the same as a thought ruling. A cloud passing over the sky does not own the sky. A wave rising in the sea does not become the whole ocean. In the same way, a thought passing through you does not have to become your master. But the tired mind forgets this, especially at night. When the body is quiet and the room is still, attention becomes easier to capture. One thought comes, and because there is no noise around it, it sounds important, so you listen. Then it brings another thought, then another. The mind begins to build a story, and soon you are no longer resting. You are traveling inside a world created by attention. This is why one small worry can become a whole storm before sleep. It is not always because the worry deserves that much space. It is because attention keeps adding breath to it. A single concern becomes a picture. The picture becomes a possibility. The possibility becomes a fear. The fear becomes a feeling in the body. The feeling in the body becomes evidence that the fear must be real. And now the mind is trapped in a circle of its own making. The Stoic practice is to interrupt this circle without violence. You do not need to attack the thought. You do not need to hate the thought. You do not need to be ashamed that the thought came. You only need to stop feeding it as if it has earned the right to consume your whole night. You can notice it, name it, and return your attention to what is simple: breath, body, present moment. The quiet fact that you are here, not inside the disaster your mind is building. This is not easy at first because attention has habits. If you have spent years feeding fear, the mind may return to fear automatically. If you have spent years feeding regret, the mind may reach for regret when the night becomes quiet. If you have spent years feeding the opinions of others, the mind may keep replaying what someone said, what they meant, what they think, what they may do. But a habit is not a command. It is only a path the mind has walked many times, and tonight you can begin to walk a different path. The first step is to stop treating every thought like a guest that must be entertained. Some thoughts only knock because they are used to being allowed in. They do not always bring wisdom. They bring noise. They bring old fear. They bring the same story in a new costume. When they arrive, you can be polite without being available. You can say, "I see you, but I will not sit with you tonight." That kind of inner boundary is powerful. Many people think peace means having no unwanted thoughts. But that is not peace. That is control, and the mind cannot be controlled like a machine. Peace is when unwanted thoughts can pass through without being fed. Peace is when a fear can appear and you do not build a house for it. Peace is when a memory can rise and you do not turn it into a trial. Peace is when an old insecurity whispers and you do not answer it with your whole nervous system. What makes a thought heavy is often the emotional argument you add to it. The thought says, "What if tomorrow is hard?" Then you add, "I will not be able to handle it." The thought says, "I made a mistake." Then you add, "I always ruin things." The thought says, "They have not replied." Then you add, "Maybe I do not matter." Notice how the first thought may be small, but the meaning you attach to it makes it heavy. The Stoic mind learns to stop adding unnecessary meaning. This is where attention becomes a form of discipline. Not harsh discipline, quiet discipline. The discipline of choosing where your inner energy goes. You would not pour clean water into a cracked cup all night and wonder why you are empty. You would not keep feeding a fire and wonder why the room is hot. Yet the mind does this with thoughts. It feeds what burns it, then asks why it cannot rest. Tonight, ask yourself, what have I been feeding? Not what thoughts have appeared, but what thoughts have received your attention. Have you been feeding fear with rehearsal? Have you been feeding regret with self-punishment? Have you been feeding anger with imaginary conversations? Have you been feeding shame with old evidence? Have you been feeding uncertainty with endless questions? This question is not meant to blame you. It is meant to wake you gently. Because once you see what you are feeding, you can choose differently. You can feed calm by returning to the breath. You can feed trust by remembering what you have already survived. You can feed wisdom by asking, "Is this within my control?" You can feed peace by saying, "Not every thought deserves my attention." You can feed rest by refusing to let fear become the center of the night. Attention is one of the few powers that belongs to you. You cannot always choose the first thought that appears, but you can learn to choose whether you continue serving it. You cannot always stop a memory from arriving, but you can choose not to follow it into every old hallway. You cannot always prevent fear from knocking, but you can choose not to open the door, set a table, and invite it to speak until morning. This is real inner freedom. The mind becomes lighter when it stops mistaking attention for obligation. Just because a thought appears does not mean you owe it a full conversation. Just because a fear feels urgent does not mean it deserves the night. Just because regret returns does not mean you must punish yourself again. Just because the mind offers a dark possibility does not mean you must live inside it before it happens. The Stoics would remind you that your inner life is shaped by what you repeatedly allow to occupy it. If you keep allowing every fear to sit at the center, fear becomes familiar. If you keep allowing every regret to speak the loudest, regret becomes the tone of your mind. If you keep allowing every memory to become a courtroom, the past becomes your ruler. But if you practice returning attention to what is true, present, and within your power, the mind slowly learns a new home. This does not happen in one perfect moment. It happens through small returns. The thought comes, you notice it, and you return. The worry rises, you name it, and you return. The memory pulls, you breathe, and you return. Each return is a quiet victory. Each return teaches the mind that it does not have to follow every road. Each return strengthens the part of you that can watch without obeying. So tonight, do not fight every thought. Simply stop feeding the ones that make your spirit heavier. Let them pass without giving them the whole room. Let them speak without allowing them to become law. Let them rise without building your identity around them. Your attention is sacred. Do not spend it carelessly on thoughts that only return you to fear. And as the night deepens, let the heaviest thoughts grow weaker from lack of feeding. Let the old stories become quieter because you are no longer giving them your breath. Let the mind discover that silence is not empty, it is healing. Let your attention rest on what is simple, steady, and here. The bed beneath you, the breath within you, the present moment holding you. You do not need to feed the fear. You do not need to feed the regret. You do not need to feed the memory that only knows how to wound. Tonight, your attention can come home. And where attention returns gently, peace begins to grow. And when you stop feeding the thoughts that make your spirit heavier, you begin to see how many of those thoughts were never truly yours. Some of them came from other people's faces, other people's silence, other people's anger, other people's disappointment, other people's coldness. You watched their reaction, and your mind quickly turned it into a verdict against you. They pulled away, and you called yourself too much. They misunderstood you, and you called yourself unclear. They became upset, and you called yourself the problem. But not every reaction from another person is a measurement of your worth. There is a quiet suffering that begins when you treat someone else's response as proof that you failed. This is a burden many people carry without noticing. They move through life studying the mood of others like it is a report card. If someone smiles, they feel safe. If someone goes quiet, they feel guilty. If someone is irritated, they feel responsible. If someone misunderstands them, they feel the need to explain until they are exhausted. If someone rejects them, they start searching themselves for what was wrong, as if every human reaction must have been caused by their own failure. But the Stoic mind asks for a pause. It asks you to step back before you turn another person's emotion into your identity. It asks, is this truly mine? Did I act with honesty? Did I speak with care? Did I do what was reasonable? Or am I only taking ownership of another person's inner world because their reaction made me uncomfortable? This question can change the way you sleep, because many sleepless nights are not caused by what you did wrong. They are caused by what you assumed you did wrong because someone else reacted poorly. You lie in bed replaying their face, their tone, their message, their silence, the way they turned away, the way they misunderstood you, the way they seemed disappointed, and your mind begins building a case against you. Maybe I said too much. Maybe I should not have been honest. Maybe I ruined everything. Maybe I am difficult. Maybe I always make people leave. But a reaction is not always a revelation. Sometimes it is only a reaction. People react from their wounds. They react from their fears. They react from their pride. They react from their tiredness. They react from their habits, expectations, memories, insecurities, and private battles you may know nothing about. Sometimes their anger is not proof that you were cruel. Sometimes it is proof that your boundary touched a place they did not want to examine. Sometimes their silence is not proof that you are unworthy. Sometimes it is proof that they do not know how to communicate. Sometimes their disappointment is not proof that you failed them. Sometimes it is proof that they expected you to abandon yourself for their comfort. The Stoic way is not to become careless with people. It is not to say, their feelings do not matter. Feelings matter. Relationships matter. Kindness matters. But there is a difference between caring about someone's feelings and becoming responsible for regulating their entire inner world. You can care without carrying. You can listen without absorbing. You can apologize when you are wrong without apologizing for existing. You can make room for someone's reaction without making that reaction the ruler of your peace. This is where many good-hearted people become tired. They do not only take responsibility for their actions, they take responsibility for the emotional weather around them. If someone is upset, they rush to fix it. If someone is distant, they chase. If someone criticizes them, they collapse inward. If someone misreads them, they feel they must keep explaining until the other person finally sees them correctly. They live as if their peace depends on everyone approving, understanding, and responding gently. But no one can live peacefully that way. It places your nervous system in the hands of people who may not even understand their own reactions. The Stoics taught that your character belongs to you. Your intention belongs to you. Your effort belongs to you. Your self-command belongs to you. But the way another person receives you does not fully belong to you. You can choose your words carefully, but you cannot control how someone hears them. You can offer respect, but you cannot force maturity in return. You can tell the truth kindly, but you cannot guarantee that truth will be welcomed. You can love someone sincerely, but you cannot control whether they know how to receive love without fear. When you forget this, other people's reactions become invisible chains. You start shrinking before anyone even asks you to. You start editing your truth to avoid tension. You start choosing silence because you fear being misunderstood. You start carrying guilt for boundaries you had every right to set. You start measuring your goodness by how comfortable everyone feels around you. But sometimes, becoming healthier will disturb people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. Sometimes, becoming honest will upset people who preferred your silence. Sometimes, choosing peace will disappoint people who expected access to every part of you. Their discomfort does not automatically mean you are wrong. This is important before sleep, because the nighttime mind often confuses discomfort with danger. If someone reacted badly during the day, your mind may treat it like an emergency. It may say, "Fix this now, explain now, apologize now, make them okay now." But if you have acted with honesty and care, you do not need to spend the whole night trying to control another person's emotional response. Sometimes the most peaceful thing you can do is allow people to feel what they feel without rushing to make their reaction your fault. This does not mean you refuse correction. A Stoic person is willing to examine themselves. If you spoke harshly, admit it. If you acted unfairly, repair it. If you were careless, learn from it. There is no peace in pride, but there is also no peace in false guilt. If your conscience is clear, do not let someone else's reaction create a guilt your actions did not earn. If your words were honest, do not turn their discomfort into proof that you should have lied. If your boundary was necessary, do not turn their anger into proof that you were unkind. The practice is to separate impact from ownership. Sometimes your actions affect people, and it is wise to notice that. But not every feeling they have is yours to fix. Someone can be hurt because you were wrong. Someone can also be hurt because you stopped allowing what was unhealthy. Someone can be disappointed because you failed them. Someone can also be disappointed because you finally chose yourself. Wisdom is learning the difference. At night you can ask, did I violate my values, or did I only disappoint their expectation? This question is a lantern. If you violated your values, return to character. Repair where you can. If you only disappointed an expectation that required you to betray yourself, let that disappointment belong where it belongs. Do not carry it into your bed like a crime. Another question is, am I seeking peace, or am I seeking control over how they see me? This matters because many people call it closure when they are really chasing control. They want the other person to understand them perfectly so they can finally rest. They want to be seen as good, kind, innocent, wise, or justified. But sometimes people will keep their version of you because it protects them from seeing themselves. Sometimes they will misunderstand you because understanding you would require humility. Sometimes they will judge you from their own wound, not from truth. You cannot build your rest on being understood by everyone. The Stoic path asks for a stronger foundation. It asks you to be more loyal to your character than to your image. Your image lives in other people's minds. Your character lives in your own choices. Your image can be twisted, misread, praised, blamed, loved, hated, or forgotten. Your character is built quietly, action by action, decision by decision, night by night. If you live only to manage image, you will never sleep deeply. There will always be someone to convince. But if you live from character, you can rest even when some people do not understand. Tonight, let other people's reactions return to their proper owner. Their anger belongs to them. Their silence belongs to them. Their interpretation belongs to them. Their disappointment belongs to them. Their healing belongs to them. Your part is your honesty, your kindness, your humility, your boundaries, your willingness to correct what is truly yours. Anything beyond that becomes imaginary control, dressed as responsibility. You do not need to hold court over every expression someone gave you today. You do not need to replay every message looking for proof that you failed. You do not need to punish yourself because someone else had a feeling. Feelings are real, but they are not always verdicts. Reactions are loud, but they are not always truth. Say to yourself, I will own my actions, but I will not own every reaction. Let that sentence settle. It is not cold, it is clean. It gives you back your proper boundary. It keeps you accountable without making you a prisoner of other people's moods. And as the night becomes quiet, let the faces fade. Let the tones soften. Let the messages rest. Let the imagined judgments lose their grip. You do not need to enter every mind and correct every version of you living there. You do not need to spend your sleep defending yourself to people who may not be listening. You do not need to shrink your soul because someone reacted from a place you cannot control. If there is something to repair, you can repair it with dignity when morning comes. If there is something to learn, you can learn it without self-hatred. But if all you are carrying is another person's reaction, lay it down. It was never meant to become your identity. Tonight, your peace does not depend on everyone being pleased with you. Tonight, your worth does not rise or fall with someone's mood. Tonight, you can be kind, honest, imperfect, misunderstood, and still allowed to rest. And when the mind finally stops carrying every reaction as failure, it becomes lighter in a way words can barely explain. It no longer has to scan every room for approval. It no longer has to chase every silence for meaning. It no longer has to turn every frown into a wound. It can return to what is yours, your breath, your choices, your character, your sleep, your quiet center. And from that center, the night becomes safe again. And when you stop carrying other people's reactions as your own failure, the mind begins to release one of its most painful habits, trying to protect tomorrow by suffering through it before it arrives. It looks ahead and builds scenes that have not happened. It creates danger out of uncertainty. It turns possibility into prophecy. And suddenly, the future is not a place you are walking toward. It becomes a storm you keep rehearsing in the dark. There is a quiet exhaustion in living through disasters that have not even reached your door. This is what the anxious mind does before sleep. It does not simply think about tomorrow. It enters tomorrow too early. It walks into the meeting before it happens. It hears the bad news before anyone speaks. It feels the rejection before anyone leaves. It carries the loss before anything is taken. It imagines the argument, the failure, the delay, the embarrassment, the disappointment, the emergency, and then forces the body to react as if all of it is already real. And the body believes what the mind keeps showing it. Your heart may beat faster. Your breathing may become shallow. Your muscles may tighten. Your stomach may turn. You may be lying safely in bed, but inside, your nervous system is standing in the middle of a future battlefield, This is why disaster rehearsal feels so draining. The mind says, I am preparing you. But the body says, then why do I feel like I am already under attack? The Stoics understood that preparation is useful, but rehearsal of fear is not the same as wisdom. Preparation asks, what is one reasonable step I can take? Fear rehearsal asks, how many ways could this go wrong? Preparation brings order. Fear rehearsal brings panic. Preparation makes tomorrow easier to meet. Fear rehearsal makes tomorrow feel dangerous before it has even begun. There is a difference between carrying an umbrella because it may rain and sitting all night imagining yourself drowning. One is wise. The other is suffering dressed as caution. The mind often confuses these two. It believes that if it imagines every possible disaster, it will be safe. But safety does not come from exhausting every dark possibility. Safety comes from knowing you can meet life with steadiness, even when you do not know exactly what is coming. This is a deeper kind of strength. Many people rehearse disaster because they do not trust themselves to handle uncertainty. They think, if I think about the worst thing now, it will hurt less if it happens. But this is rarely true. What usually happens is that they suffer once in imagination, then again if the event comes, and sometimes many more times when the event never comes at all. The mind pays pain in advance for a future that may never ask for it. The Stoic mind refuses to pay that price. It says, I will prepare where preparation is possible. I will act where action is mine, but I will not donate my peace to a future that has not arrived. This is not denial. This is discipline. It is the discipline of refusing to let fear become your nightly storyteller. It is the discipline of not giving tomorrow permission to enter tonight with muddy feet. Tomorrow is not here yet. That sounds simple, but when the mind is afraid, it forgets simple truths. It treats tomorrow like an intruder already in the room. It treats every possible problem like a present emergency. But tonight, only tonight is here. The bed is here. The breath is here. The body is here. The darkness is here. The future is only a picture in the mind, and pictures do not need to rule the nervous system. The Stoics practiced returning to what is present because the present is the only place where character can act. You cannot show courage tomorrow while lying awake tonight rehearsing fear. You cannot solve next week's problem at midnight with a tired mind. You cannot control someone's future response by imagining 10 versions of it. You cannot prevent pain by living inside it early. All you can do is waste the strength that tomorrow may actually need. This is why sleep itself becomes an act of wisdom. Rest is not the opposite of preparation. Rest is part of preparation. A rested mind sees more clearly. A rested body responds with more patience. A rested spirit is less likely to turn a small problem into a disaster. When you allow yourself to sleep, you are not abandoning tomorrow. You are gathering the calm needed to meet it well. But fear will try to argue. Fear will say, but what if something bad happens? And the Stoic answer is not, nothing bad will happen. That would be false comfort. Life is not always gentle. The Stoic answer is stronger. If something comes, I will meet it when it comes. This answer does not promise a perfect future. It promises a present self that refuses to collapse before the future has spoken. That is real courage. Not the courage that needs certainty. Not the courage that says, I know everything will be easy. But the courage that says, I do not know everything, and still I will not surrender my night to fear. This is the kind of courage that lets tomorrow arrive as tomorrow, not as 1,000 imagined disasters wearing your mind down before dawn. To stop rehearsing disaster, you must learn to recognize when the mind has left planning and entered punishment. Planning has limits. It chooses a next step, then stops. Punishment has no end. It keeps asking, what if? until the body is tense and the heart is tired. Planning writes the reminder, sets the alarm, prepares the document, chooses the first action. Punishment keeps you awake after all reasonable action has already been taken. So tonight, ask yourself, is there one useful thing I can do? If there is, do it simply. Write the note. Prepare what needs to be ready. Make the small decision. Then stop. Let the mind know that action has been taken. But if there is nothing useful left to do, then continuing to think is not preparation. It is fear asking for more of your life, and fear is not entitled to the whole night. Sometimes the mind rehearses disaster because it wants emotional control. It believes that if it expects the worst, disappointment will not surprise it. But expecting the worst does not always protect the heart. Sometimes it trains the heart to live without joy. It makes peace feel unsafe. It makes hope feel foolish. It makes the future feel like a threat before it has a chance to become anything else. The Stoic way is not blind optimism. It is clear readiness. It does not say, everything will go perfectly. It says, whatever comes, I will return to my values. If tomorrow brings pressure, I will meet it with patience. If tomorrow brings delay, I will meet it with endurance. If tomorrow brings misunderstanding, I will meet it with honesty. If tomorrow brings disappointment, I will meet it without abandoning myself. This kind of readiness is deeper than worry because it prepares your character, not your panic. That is what you can carry into sleep. Not every possible outcome, but the quiet promise of your own steadiness. You do not need to know how everything will unfold. You only need to trust that you can take the next right step when the time comes. You do not need to rehearse every conversation. You only need to know that you can speak with truth and restraint. You do not need to predict every problem. You only need to be willing to respond with wisdom. You do not need to suffer tomorrow tonight. Let tomorrow remain unopened. There is peace in letting the future keep its distance, not because you do not care, but because you understand order. Tonight is for rest. Tomorrow is for action. The future has its own hour, and this is not it. When you drag tomorrow into tonight, you rob both. You rob tonight of peace, and you rob tomorrow of your rested strength. So when the mind begins again, when it starts building scenes, when it says, "What if this goes wrong?" answer softly, "Then I will meet it when it arrives." When it says, "What if I am not ready?" say, "Rest is part of becoming ready." When it says, "What if I cannot handle it?" say, "I have handled hard things before, and I do not need to suffer early to prove I am strong." Let those words become a boundary around your peace. You are not required to visit every possible sorrow before sleep. You are not required to rehearse every disaster to be responsible. You are not required to frighten yourself into preparedness. The future will come one moment at a time, not all at once. And when it comes, it will bring only what is real, not every shadow your mind invented. Tonight, give yourself permission to stop living ahead of your life. Return to this breath. Return to this room. Return to the quiet weight of your body resting, not fighting. Tomorrow is not asking you to enter it yet. It is still far enough away to be left alone. Let it come in its own time. Let morning open what morning must open. Let daylight reveal what daylight must reveal. And as you stop rehearsing every possible disaster, the mind slowly learns that uncertainty is not an enemy standing over the bed. It is simply the space between now and what has not arrived. You do not have to fill that space with fear. You can fill it with stillness. You can fill it with trust. You can fill it with sleep. Tomorrow may come with work. It may come with decisions. It may come with things you did not expect. But it does not need your panic tonight. It does not need your suffering in advance. It does not need 4 hours of imagined pain before it has even begun. Let tomorrow arrive as tomorrow. Let tonight remain tonight, and let your mind finally rest in the only moment it truly has. And when you allow tomorrow to remain tomorrow, you begin to notice another place where the mind keeps losing its rest. It is not only running ahead into the future. Sometimes it is kneeling before the past, asking it to finally explain why it hurts so much. It keeps returning to the same old door, hoping the past will open, speak clearly, and give a reason strong enough to make the pain feel fair. But the past is silent. It has already happened, and the mind becomes tired because it keeps begging silence to answer. There is a deep ache in waiting for yesterday to explain what it never understood. This is one of the reasons the mind cannot rest. It does not simply remember the past. It questions it. It interrogates it. It asks why that person changed, why that opportunity disappeared, why that loss came, why that betrayal happened, why that mistake was made, why that season had to be so hard, why life allowed something you were not ready to carry. And sometimes, beneath all those questions, there is one quiet cry. Please make this make sense, so I can finally put it down. But not every pain gives a clean explanation. Not every chapter comes with a clear lesson at the moment you want it. Not every person can explain their actions honestly. Not every loss can be wrapped in a reason that feels gentle. Some things happened because people were limited. Some things happened because someone chose poorly. Some things happened because timing was cruel. Some things happened because you did not know what you know now. Some things happened because life can be uncertain, fragile, and deeply unfair. And the mind struggles with this because it wants meaning to arrive before peace. The Stoics understood that the mind suffers when it demands from reality what reality cannot give. If the past is already fixed, then begging it for a different explanation becomes another form of resistance. It is not wrong to seek understanding. Understanding can be healing. But there is a point where the search for understanding stops bringing clarity and starts becoming a chain. You are no longer learning from the past. You are asking the past to become kind enough to release you. And that is where the danger begins. Because if your rest depends on the past explaining itself, then your peace is trapped in a place you cannot enter. If your healing depends on someone telling the truth, then your freedom is in the hands of someone who may never be honest. If your sleep depends on knowing exactly why things unfolded the way they did, then your mind will keep searching through the night, turning over old stones, hoping one of them will finally speak. But peace cannot be built on the cooperation of yesterday. The past may never give the answer your heart wants. The person who hurt you may never admit the full truth. The season that broke you may never explain why it had to be so heavy. The opportunity that slipped away may never reveal whether it was protection or loss. The choice you regret may never stop aching completely. But even without perfect answers, you are still allowed to live. You are still allowed to breathe. You are still allowed to sleep. This is not easy because the human heart wants meaning. It wants the pain to have a reason. It wants the wound to become wisdom quickly. It wants the betrayal to come with a confession. It wants the delay to come with proof that something better is coming. It wants the grief to come with a clear purpose. And when the answer does not come, the mind may feel abandoned by life itself. But the Stoic path teaches something quieter and stronger. It teaches that you do not always need an explanation before you can choose your response. You do not always need to know why before you can decide who you will become. You do not always need the past to speak before you can stop letting it rule the night. Sometimes character begins exactly where explanations end. That is a hard truth, but it is also a freeing one. Because if you need the past to explain itself before you can rest, you may wait forever, But if you only need to return to what is within your power, then peace becomes possible tonight. You may not control why it happened. You may not control whether the person understands. You may not control whether the full meaning is ever revealed. But you can control whether you keep handing your entire nervous system to a question that has no answer tonight. The mind often believes that if it keeps asking why, it is healing. But sometimes why becomes a circle. Why did they leave? Why did they lie? Why did I trust? Why did I stay? Why did I not see it? Why did life take that turn? The question goes around, and each time it returns, it brings the same pain with it. A question that never moves toward wisdom becomes a wheel. And the longer the mind runs on that wheel, the more exhausted it becomes. A better question before sleep is not always, why did this happen? Sometimes the better question is, what does peace require from me now? That question brings you back to the present. It does not deny the wound. It does not silence the ache. It simply refuses to let the ache become your whole world. It says, maybe I do not understand everything yet, but I can still stop hurting myself tonight. Another better question is, what did this reveal? Not why did it happen, but what did it show you? Did it reveal that someone could not meet you with honesty? Did it reveal that you were abandoning yourself to keep connection? Did it reveal that you needed stronger boundaries? Did it reveal that you were placing your peace in unstable hands? Did it reveal that you can survive what you once thought would destroy you? These questions give you something useful. They take you from helpless searching into quiet growth. The past may not explain itself, but it often reveals something, and revelation can be enough. It can be enough to know that you must choose differently now. It can be enough to know that your heart deserves safer places. It can be enough to know that some doors closed because they could not hold the person you were becoming. It can be enough to know that your pain taught you what your peace must now protect. It can be enough to know that you are no longer the same person who walked through that old fire. But the mind may still say, I need to know why. And when it does, answer with gentleness. Do not shame the mind for wanting clarity. The mind asks why because it wants safety. It believes that if it understands the cause, it can prevent the wound from ever happening again. So speak to it like you would speak to a frightened child. Say, I know you want an answer. I know you are trying to protect me, but we cannot get this answer tonight by suffering. We can rest without knowing everything. That is not weakness. That is wisdom with tenderness. There are some answers that only distance can give. There are some lessons that only time can translate. There are some wounds that will not make sense while you are still touching them every night. Sometimes the mind must stop demanding explanation so the heart can begin receiving peace. Sometimes you must let the question sleep before the answer can ever become clear. This is why rest matters. A tired mind turns mystery into danger. A rested mind can hold mystery with more strength. A tired mind says, if I do not understand, I am not safe. A rested mind says, I do not understand yet, but I can still take the next step. A tired mind begs the past to speak. A rested mind listens to the present and says, what is mine to do now? Tonight you are not required to solve the mystery of every wound. You are not required to explain every disappointment. You are not required to understand every person who failed you. You are not required to turn every painful memory into a perfect lesson before your eyes close. Some things can remain unclear and still lose their power over your sleep. Let that be enough for this hour. Let the past be silent without making its silence your prison. Let the unanswered questions sit outside the door. Let the mind stop knocking on yesterday, begging for a voice. If the answer comes one day, it will come in its own time. If it never comes, you will still be able to become whole. because wholeness does not come only from explanation. Sometimes wholeness comes from finally accepting that your life is worth living even without all the answers. So tonight, say inwardly, I release the need for the past to explain itself before I rest. Say it slowly. Say it without force. Say it like a hand unclenching. I release the need for the past to explain itself before I rest. The past may remain unclear. The wound may still have questions. The story may still have missing pages. But your peace does not have to wait at the edge of those missing pages forever. And as the night grows softer, let the mind return from the old door. Let it stop pressing its ear against what will not speak. Let it come back to the breath, to the body, to the quiet room, to the simple truth that this moment is not asking for an explanation. It is asking for surrender, not surrender to pain, surrender from the fight to make pain explain itself. And in that surrender, the mind begins to rest. Not because the past finally answered, but because you finally stopped making your rest depend on its answer. And when the mind stops begging the past to explain itself, it begins to face another important choice. It can look back with wisdom, or it can look back with a weapon. It can review the day to learn, or it can review the day to wound itself. This difference is quiet, but it changes everything. Because at night, when the body is tired and the heart is open, reflection can become healing, but emotional self-attack can turn the bed into a place of punishment. There is a thin line between learning from your life and using your life against yourself. Reflection is calm. It may be honest, but it is not cruel. It looks at what happened and asks, what can this teach me? Emotional self-attack looks at the same moment and asks, what is wrong with me? Reflection brings light. Self-attack brings shame. Reflection helps you return to yourself with more wisdom. Self-attack pushes you further away from yourself. This is why so many people feel mentally exhausted at night. They think they are reflecting, but they are really accusing themselves. They replay the day, not to understand it, but to punish themselves for not living it perfectly. They think about a conversation and call themselves foolish. They think about a mistake and call themselves weak. They think about something they forgot and call themselves irresponsible. They think about a feeling they could not control and call themselves broken. Slowly, the mind stops being a guide and becomes an enemy. The Stoic way is different. Stoicism asks you to examine your life, yes, but not with hatred. The Stoics believed in reviewing the day because a person cannot grow without seeing themselves clearly. But clear sight is not the same as harsh judgment. To see clearly means to look at your actions without lies, but also without violence. It means you can admit, I could have done better, without adding, I am worthless. It means you can say, that was not my best response, without saying, I always ruin everything. It means you can notice a weakness without turning your whole identity into that weakness. This matters because the mind learns from the way you speak to it. If every mistake is met with attack, the mind becomes afraid of honesty. It starts hiding from the truth because the truth has become painful. But if every mistake is met with firm kindness, the mind becomes willing to learn. It can say, yes, I see this. I accept it. I will correct it. That is how real growth happens. Not through shame, but through safe honesty. At night, emotional self-attack often wears the clothing of responsibility. It says, I am only trying to make sure this never happens again. But if your thinking leaves you weaker, smaller, and more afraid, it is not responsibility anymore. It is punishment. True responsibility leads to a next step. Self-attack leads only to more pain. True responsibility says, tomorrow, I will speak more carefully. Self-attack says, I am a terrible person. True responsibility says, I need to rest so I can do better. Self-attack says, I do not deserve rest until I have suffered enough. You must learn to hear the difference. Reflection has an ending. Self-attack keeps going. Reflection gathers the lesson and closes the book. Self-attack keeps reopening the same page, hoping more pain will somehow create more wisdom. Reflection feels serious but clean. Self-attack feels heavy, muddy, and endless. Reflection leaves you with direction. Self-attack leaves you with identity wounds. Reflection says, this is what happened. Self-attack says, this is who you are forever. Before sleep, ask yourself, is this thought helping me become wiser, or is it only making me feel smaller? That question can protect your night. If the thought brings a clear lesson, receive it. If it brings only shame, do not let it keep speaking. You are not required to listen to every voice inside your mind just because it sounds familiar. Some inner voices were learned in pain. Some were formed by old criticism. Some are echoes of people who did not know how to speak to you with care. Not every inner voice deserves authority. A Stoic mind does not avoid correction. It simply refuses cruelty. If you did wrong, admit it. If you hurt someone, plan how to repair it. If you avoided something important, decide on one action for tomorrow. If you lost control of your words, learn what triggered you. If you wasted time, notice what pulled you away. But once the lesson is named, stop. Do not keep adding insults. Do not keep replaying the scene until your body is tense. Do not turn a correctable moment into a life sentence. The purpose of reflection is to return power to you. The purpose of self-attack is often to keep you trapped in helplessness. When you reflect, you see a path. When you attack yourself, you see only a wall. That is why emotional self-attack is so dangerous at night. It makes the mind believe there is no way forward because it turns every problem into proof of personal failure. And once the problem becomes your identity, it feels impossible to change. But you are not your worst moment. You are not your tired reaction. You are not one poor choice. You are not one unfinished task. You are not one awkward conversation. You are not one fear that visited your mind in the dark. You are a person learning how to live with more wisdom. And learning always includes moments you wish had gone differently. There is no growth without seeing what needs to change. But there is also no peace when seeing becomes stabbing. You can hold yourself accountable without holding yourself hostage. You can be honest without being harsh. You can face the day without turning the night into a punishment chamber. So when the mind begins its review tonight, guide it gently. Do not let it wander into accusation. Ask simple questions. What did I do well today? Where did I lose myself? What did I learn? What can I do differently tomorrow? What must I now release? These questions are enough. They give the mind order without turning it against you. And if the mind tries to go further, if it tries to call you names, if it tries to drag old shame into the room, if it tries to say you are behind, broken, foolish, or unworthy, stop it softly, not with panic, not with anger, with quiet authority. Say, that is not reflection, that is attack. Then return to the breath. This one sentence can change the whole night. That is not reflection, that is attack. It helps you separate wisdom from cruelty. It reminds you that not every painful thought is useful. It gives you permission to stop listening when the mind crosses the line from learning into punishment. And the more you practice this, the more your inner world begins to feel safe again. A safe inner world does not mean you never feel regret. It means regret does not become a weapon. It does not mean you never notice your flaws. It means your flaws do not become your whole name. It does not mean you avoid truth. It means truth is allowed to enter without destroying you. The Stoics wanted the soul to become steady, and steadiness requires a mind that can correct itself without hating itself. A person who hates themselves may obey for a while, but they do not become truly free. Freedom comes when you can look at your life honestly and still remain on your own side. Tonight, let reflection be gentle and useful. Let it be like a lamp, not a knife. Let it show you the path without cutting your heart open. Let it reveal the lesson without burying you under shame. Let it help you close the day, not reopen every wound. You do not need to attack yourself to become better. You do not need to hate who you were today to become wiser tomorrow. You do not need to turn every mistake into proof that peace does not belong to you. Take the lesson, leave the punishment. Take the wisdom, leave the shame. Take the next step, leave the old sentence. This is how the mind learns to rest. This is how the night becomes safe. This is how your inner voice slowly changes from an accuser into a guide. And as the darkness settles, let the day be reviewed with mercy. Let the truth be seen, but not sharpened against you. Let the heart understand that correction is enough. Growth is enough. A sincere desire to do better is enough. Tonight, you are not on trial. Tonight, you are learning. And learning does not need to hurt more than the lesson itself. And when you learn the difference between reflection and self-attack, another quiet confusion becomes easier to correct. The mind begins to see that not every long thought is useful. Not every mental loop is wisdom. Not every repeated worry is preparation. Sometimes what you call getting ready is only fear walking in circles. Sometimes what you call thinking ahead is only the mind trying to feel safe by exhausting itself before anything has happened. There is a strange heaviness that comes from preparing for life by losing sleep to thoughts that do not help you act. Overthinking often arrives wearing responsible clothes. It does not always look like fear at first. It sounds mature. It sounds careful. It says, "Let me think about this one more time. Let me go through every possibility. Let me replay that conversation again. Let me prepare for what could go wrong. Let me make sure I am not missing anything." And because those words sound reasonable, you allow them to continue. But after some time, you notice something. You are not clearer, you are not calmer, you are not closer to a wise action. You are only more tired. That is the moment you must pause. Preparation gives the mind direction. Overthinking gives the mind motion without progress. Preparation has a purpose. Overthinking has a hunger. Preparation asks, "What can I do?" Overthinking asks, "What if?" again and again until the heart has no peace left. Preparation leads to one useful step. Overthinking leads to 20 imagined roads, most of which may never exist. Preparation leaves you steadier. Overthinking leaves you afraid of your own future. The Stoic mind respects preparation. It does not live carelessly. It does not wait for life to collapse before it acts. It plans, but it plans within reason. It looks ahead, but it does not abandon the present. It considers what may happen, but it does not surrender the soul to every possible disaster. This is the balance many people lose at night. They believe that thinking more will make them safer, when what they truly need is to think clearly, then stop. Clarity has an ending. Overthinking does not. When you are preparing, the mind can answer simple questions. What is the issue? What is within my control? What action can I take? When is the right time to take it? What must I accept if I cannot control the outcome? These questions bring order. They turn pressure into a plan. They give the mind a place to stand. But overthinking refuses to stand anywhere. It keeps moving. It keeps searching. It keeps reopening. It keeps saying, "But what if there is more?" Even after a plan is made, It keeps trying to plan the feelings, reactions, timing, and results that no plan can fully control. This is why overthinking feels so heavy before sleep. It asks the mind to do impossible work. It asks you to predict what cannot be predicted. It asks you to control what belongs to other people. It asks you to guarantee what only time can reveal. It asks you to rehearse strength instead of resting enough to have strength. And because the mind cannot complete these tasks, it keeps spinning. The spinning then feels like effort, and effort feels like responsibility. But effort without wisdom is not responsibility. It is exhaustion. A person can think about tomorrow all night and still be unprepared for it, because preparation is not the same as tension. A tense mind is not always a ready mind. Sometimes a tense mind is scattered, reactive, impatient, and fearful. A prepared mind is simpler. It has done what can be done. It has named what cannot be controlled. It has chosen a next step. Then it allows rest to finish the work that worry cannot do. This is important. Rest is not the enemy of preparation. Rest is part of preparation. You may think that staying awake proves you care, but a tired mind may mishandle what a rested mind could meet with calm. A tired mind may send the wrong message, speak too sharply, give up too soon, imagine insult where there is none, or see disaster where there is only delay. When you deny yourself rest in the name of preparation, you may be weakening the very judgment you need tomorrow. The Stoics valued reason, and reason requires space. It requires steadiness. It requires the ability to separate fact from fear. Overthinking destroys that space. It mixes facts with imagination until you can no longer tell what is real. One real problem becomes 5 possible problems. One possible problem becomes a disaster. One disaster becomes an identity. Suddenly, you are not just facing a task. You are facing a whole invented future where everything goes wrong and you are not enough to handle it. But a future built by fear is not prophecy. It is only a picture. And you do not need to sleep inside every picture your mind paints. To stop confusing overthinking with preparation, you must learn to measure thought by its fruit. After thinking about this, am I clearer? Do I have a simple action? Do I understand what is mine and what is not? Do I feel a little more grounded? If yes, that may be preparation. But if the thought leaves you more tense, more confused, more ashamed, more afraid, and still without a useful next step, then it is no longer preparation. It is rumination. It is fear feeding on attention. The mind may resist this truth because overthinking gives the illusion of control. When you are thinking, you feel like you are doing something. But not all inner activity is useful activity. A person pacing in a locked room is moving, but they are not traveling. A person stirring an empty pot is active, but they are not cooking. A person replaying fear all night is busy, but they are not preparing. The question is not, am I thinking? The question is this thought leading me toward wisdom? Before sleep, the Stoic practice is simple. Reduce the problem to its true size. Fear makes everything large. Wisdom makes things clear. Take the thought that is troubling you and bring it down from the clouds. What is the actual fact? Not the fear, not the story, not the worst case. The fact. Maybe the fact is, I have a conversation tomorrow. Maybe the fact is, I have not finished this task. Maybe the fact is, I do not know how someone will respond. Maybe the fact is, I need to make a decision soon. Stay with the fact first. Then ask, what is one useful action? Not 10, not every possible action. 1. If there is an action for tonight, do it briefly. Write the note. Set the reminder. Prepare what is needed. If there is no action for tonight, then the next useful action is rest. That is not avoidance. That is obedience to reality. If the hour cannot hold the solution, Do not force the hour to carry the pressure. This is where peace begins to return. The mind likes small, clear instructions. Overthinking thrives in open-ended fear. So give the mind closure. Say, the next step is chosen. Say, this cannot be solved tonight. Say, I have prepared what I can. Say, further thinking will not improve this. Say, I release the rest until morning. These sentences are not magic, but they are training. They teach the mind that endless thought is not the same as safety. You may need to repeat this many nights. That is okay. The mind that has practiced overthinking for years will not always become quiet in one evening. But each time you stop the loop and return to what is useful, you weaken the old habit. Each time you choose one clear step over 20 fearful possibilities, you become more disciplined. Each time you rest after preparing, you teach the body that it does not need panic to be protected. The Stoic way is not to have an empty mind. It is to have an ordered mind. A mind that knows when to think and when to stop. A mind that can prepare without worshipping fear. A mind that can look at uncertainty without turning it into an enemy. A mind that can say, I have done enough for this hour. Tonight, do not ask your thoughts to perform the work of courage, time, action, and sleep all at once. Let thought do its proper work, then let it step aside. Let preparation be simple. Let the future remain unfinished. Let your body receive the rest it needs to become strong enough for what comes next. You do not need to rehearse the whole road before taking the first step. You do not need to solve every possibility before morning. You do not need to stay awake just because life is uncertain. Prepare with wisdom. Stop when preparation ends. Let the mind understand that after the next right step has been named, more thinking is not always devotion. Sometimes it is only fear asking for another hour. And tonight, fear does not get another hour. And when you stop confusing overthinking with preparation, the mind finally comes to one of the deepest doors in Stoic rest. It is the door most people avoid because they misunderstand it. They think acceptance means surrendering their strength. They think it means allowing life to defeat them. They think it means saying yes to pain, yes to unfairness, yes to disappointment, yes to everything that wounded them. But true acceptance is not weakness. It is the moment the mind stops wasting its last strength fighting what is already here. There is a peace that only begins when you stop wrestling with reality. Acceptance does not mean you like what happened. It does not mean you wanted it. It does not mean you would choose it again. It does not mean the pain was fair, the delay was easy, the loss was small, or the disappointment did not matter. Acceptance simply means you have stopped standing in front of the truth with clenched fists, demanding that it become something else before you allow yourself to breathe. This is why acceptance is the first doorway into rest. Because the mind cannot sleep deeply while it is still fighting the shape of the moment. It cannot rest while it is saying, this should not be happening. They should not have done that. I should not feel this way. Life should be different by now. I should be stronger already. Every should becomes another wall between you and peace. The body lies down, but the mind keeps pushing against a reality that does not move. The Stoics understood that suffering often comes not only from what happens, but from the war we begin against what happens. Pain may be unavoidable, but resistance can multiply pain until it becomes unbearable. The rain may fall, but anger at the rain makes you stand outside longer. The door may close, but denial makes you keep pulling on the handle until your hands are tired. A person may have shown you who they are, but refusal makes you keep negotiating with a truth that has already spoken. Acceptance is the moment you stop losing energy to the wrong battle. Most people fear acceptance because they confuse it with giving up, but giving up says, nothing matters, so I will do nothing. Acceptance says, this is what is true right now, and from this truth I will choose my next wise step. Giving up collapses. Acceptance stands still long enough to see clearly. Giving up abandons responsibility. Acceptance returns responsibility to its proper place. Giving up closes the eyes. Acceptance opens them. There is great strength in saying, "This is where I am," not where I wanted to be, not where I thought I would be, not where others expected me to be, but here. This is the truth of this hour. This is the state of my heart. This is the problem in front of me. This is the loss I am facing. This is the tiredness in my body. This is the uncertainty I cannot yet solve. This is the life I must meet now. That honesty is not defeat. It is ground. You cannot take the next step from a place you are pretending to be. You cannot heal a wound you keep denying. You cannot release a burden you refuse to name. You cannot rest in a life you are constantly rejecting. Acceptance gives you a place to stand. And once you have a place to stand, wisdom can finally begin. At night, the mind often avoids acceptance because acceptance feels too final. If you accept that something happened, it may feel like the hope of undoing it is gone. If you accept that someone cannot give you what you need, it may feel like the dream of them changing must die. If you accept that the past cannot explain itself, it may feel like the questions will remain unanswered. If you accept that you are tired, it may feel like you are admitting weakness. But acceptance does not take away hope. It removes false hope so real strength can return. False hope says, maybe if I keep suffering, reality will change backward. Real strength says, reality may not change backward, but I can move forward with dignity. False hope says, maybe if I keep replaying it, I will find the missing answer. Real strength says, even without every answer, I can stop injuring myself tonight. False hope says, maybe if I keep holding this pain, it will prove how much it mattered. Real strength says, it mattered, and I still deserve peace. Acceptance is not the end of caring. It is the end of useless suffering. This is why rest comes through acceptance. The nervous system relaxes when it no longer has to fight invisible wars. The jaw softens when it no longer has to hold back words meant for people who are not in the room. The shoulders loosen when they no longer have to carry a future that has not arrived. The chest opens when the heart no longer has to resist every feeling it contains. So much tension comes from saying no to what already is. No, I should not be hurt. No, I should not be tired. No, this should not still affect me. No, this should not be my life. No, this should have gone differently. But the body hears all this resistance as danger. It stays alert. It stays braced. It stays ready for battle. And sleep cannot come easily to a body that believes the battle is still happening. The Stoic practice is to meet the moment without adding war to it. If sadness is here, let it be here without calling it weakness. If regret is here, let it be here without turning it into identity. If uncertainty is here, let it be here without making it a disaster. If tiredness is here, let it be here without shame. You are not required to like every visitor that enters the mind, but you do not have to fight each one at the door. Acceptance says, this feeling is here, I can breathe with it. It says, this problem is here, I can face it in the proper hour. It says, this memory is here, I can observe it without becoming it. It says, this uncertainty is here, I can let it exist without giving it my whole night. That is the doorway. Not perfect peace, not instant relief, not a mind that never trembles, but the first soft opening where the war inside begins to quiet. The moment you stop saying, this must not be, and begin saying, this is here, and I will meet it with wisdom. The moment you stop using energy to deny the present and start using energy to live from it. Many people spend years waiting for life to become acceptable before they accept it. They say, "I will rest when the problem is gone. I will breathe when the answer comes. I will feel peace when the person changes. I will stop worrying when I know everything is safe." But this makes peace dependent on conditions you may not control. Stoicism offers a different kind of freedom. It teaches you to stop waiting for reality to become perfect before you stop fighting it. You can accept an unfinished life. You can accept an unanswered question. You can accept that someone disappointed you. You can accept that you are still healing. You can accept that tomorrow is uncertain. You can accept that tonight, the wisest thing you can do is rest. And none of this makes you weak. It makes you honest enough to stop wasting strength. It makes you humble enough to stop pretending you can control everything. It makes you brave enough to face the truth without needing to destroy yourself. Before sleep, acceptance can become very simple. You do not need a big speech. You do not need to solve your entire heart. You can simply say, "This is what is true for now." Then breathe. "This is what I can control." Then breathe. "This is what I must release tonight." Then breathe. The mind may resist at first, but do not argue with the resistance. Accept that too. Even resistance can be held gently. The more you practice this, the more the mind learns that acceptance is safe. It learns that letting go of the fight does not mean letting go of yourself. It learns that reality can be painful without becoming your enemy. It learns that peace can begin before everything is repaired. It learns that rest is not a reward given only to people with perfect lives. Rest is a human need, even in the middle of uncertainty. Tonight, let acceptance be the first doorway, not the whole house, not the final answer, just the doorway. Step through it slowly. Leave behind the need to argue with what is already here. Leave behind the belief that you must resist the present to prove you care. Leave behind the fear that peace means you have lost. You have not lost. You are returning. Returning to the breath. Returning to the body. Returning to the quiet place inside you that does not need reality to be perfect before it becomes still. And as acceptance opens, rest comes closer, not because the world has changed in this moment, but because you have stopped fighting the moment long enough for peace to enter. And when acceptance opens the first doorway into rest, the next skill becomes clear. You begin to see that some of the heaviness in your mind is not even made of your own life. It is made of other people's choices, other people's emotions, other people's wounds, other people's expectations, and other people's unfinished lessons. You have been carrying them as if love means becoming a storage place for everything others refuse to face. But the Stoic mind learns a cleaner truth. Not every burden that touches you belongs to you. There is a deep tiredness that comes from holding what another soul was meant to carry. Sometimes you carry a burden because you care. You see someone struggling and your heart opens. You see someone angry and you want to calm them. You see someone disappointed and you want to repair the room. You see someone making poor choices and you want to rescue them before those choices hurt them. At first, this feels noble. It feels kind. It feels like love. But slowly, if you are not careful, care becomes carrying. Compassion becomes control. Help becomes self-erasure. And before long, you are lying in bed with a mind full of problems that do not fully belong to your hands. The Stoics would ask one question again and again: what is mine? Not what do I feel pulled toward. Not what am I afraid will happen. Not what do I wish I could prevent. But what is truly mine? Your actions are yours. Your honesty is yours. Your patience is yours. Your boundaries are yours. Your willingness to help wisely is yours. But another person's choices are not yours. Their healing is not yours. Their mood is not yours. Their refusal to grow is not yours. Their interpretation of your boundary is not yours. Their consequences are not yours to carry as punishment in your own body. This is difficult for people with tender hearts, because tender-hearted people often feel responsible for the atmosphere around them. If someone is unhappy, they feel guilty. If someone is silent, they start searching for what they did wrong. If someone is struggling, they feel selfish for resting. If someone makes a harmful choice, they wonder if they could have stopped it by saying one more thing, giving one more chance, offering one more piece of themselves. And the mind becomes heavy because it is trying to live many lives at once. But you were not built to live every life around you. You were not given one heart so it could become a warehouse for every person's pain. You were not given one mind so it could become the manager of every possible outcome. You were not given one body so it could carry the tension of everyone who refuses to take responsibility for their own path. You can love people, you can support people, you can encourage people, but you cannot become the soul inside them that chooses for them. The burden must return to its proper owner. This does not mean you become cold. It does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean you watch people suffer and feel nothing. Stoicism is not the death of compassion. It is compassion with order. It teaches you how to help without losing yourself. It teaches you how to stand near someone's storm without becoming the storm. It teaches you how to offer a hand without placing their whole life on your back. There is a difference between helping and carrying. Helping says, I will support you in what is yours to face. Carrying says, I will face it for you so you never have to grow. Helping respects the other person's strength. Carrying secretly assumes they cannot handle their own life. Helping has boundaries. Carrying has exhaustion. Helping can sleep after doing what is reasonable. Carrying stays awake, trying to control what belongs to someone else's will. Many people think carrying is love, but sometimes carrying prevents growth. When you keep absorbing someone's consequences, they may never learn from them. When you keep calming every reaction, they may never learn self-command. When you keep explaining truth to someone committed to misunderstanding, they may never face their own resistance. When you keep rescuing others from discomfort, you may be stealing the very discomfort that was meant to teach them. That is a hard truth, but it is a freeing one. A burden belongs to its proper owner when that person is the one who must choose, learn, repair, apologize, grow, grieve, accept, or change. You may walk beside them. You may speak truth kindly. You may offer what is wise and possible, but you cannot do the inner work for them. You cannot digest their pain for them. You cannot make their conscience honest. You cannot make their heart ready. You cannot make their timing match your hope. And when you try, your mind loses rest. At night, you may find yourself thinking about someone else's life more than your own. You wonder what they will do, whether they are okay, whether they are angry, whether they understood, whether they will change, whether they will ruin things, whether they will finally see what you have been trying to show them. And slowly your bed becomes crowded with people who are not there. Their problems sit beside you. Their emotions lie on your chest. Their choices stand at the foot of the bed demanding your attention. But tonight, you can begin to send each burden home. You can say, this emotion belongs to them. You can say, this choice belongs to them. You can say, this consequence belongs to them. You can say, this misunderstanding belongs to them. You can say, this healing belongs to them. And then you can ask, what belongs to me? Maybe what belongs to you is kindness. Maybe it is honesty. Maybe it is silence. Maybe it is prayer. Maybe it is distance. Maybe it is sleep. The mind becomes lighter when it stops confusing love with ownership. You can care about someone without owning their life. You can be sad about their choices without making those choices your identity. You can wish someone peace without sacrificing your own. You can hope someone changes without making your sleep depend on their transformation. You can forgive someone without taking responsibility for what they did. You can understand someone's pain without allowing that pain to excuse harm. This is the Stoic balance. Soft heart, clear boundary, open hand, steady center. Before sleep, picture the burdens you carried today, not as a vision, but as a simple inner naming. This belongs to my work. This belongs to my family. This belongs to someone's disappointment. This belongs to a conversation. This belongs to a fear about someone else's future. Then place each one where it belongs. Do not throw it with anger. Return it with peace. The goal is not rejection. The goal is order. Order is what the soul needs before rest. Disorder says, everything is mine. Order says, this is mine, this is theirs, this is time's, this is life's, this is not for tonight. When order enters the mind, sleep becomes possible. Not because the world has no problems, but because you are no longer pretending every problem belongs in your hands. There may be people who do not like this change in you. They may call you distant when you stop overextending. They may call you selfish when you stop absorbing their emotions. They may call you cold when you stop rescuing them from consequences. But sometimes people call you selfish when you stop being useful to their avoidance. Let their reaction belong to them too. Your peace cannot depend on everyone approving the return of their own burden. The Stoic does not ask, will everyone like my boundary? The Stoic asks, is this boundary just, wise, and necessary? If it is, then hold it with calm, not with pride, not with cruelty. Calm, because a boundary held in anger still keeps you tied to the storm. A boundary held in peace gives you back to yourself. Tonight, give back what is not yours. Give the past back to time. Give other people's opinions back to their own minds. Give their choices back to their own character. Give tomorrow back to morning. Give the unsolved back to patience. Give the impossible back to life. Keep only what is truly yours, your breath, your conduct, your next honest step, your willingness to rest. And as each burden returns to its proper owner, the soul begins to feel space again. The mind no longer has to stand guard over every person's path. The heart no longer has to prove love by becoming tired. The body no longer has to carry invisible loads through the night. You can care deeply and still sleep. You can love people and still let them be responsible for themselves. You can be compassionate without becoming consumed. Tonight, let every burden go back to where it belongs. Not because you have stopped caring, but because you have finally learned that peace requires order. And some things cannot become ordered until they are no longer being carried by the wrong person. And when every burden begins to return to its proper owner, the pillow becomes something sacred again. Not a place where other people's choices gather. Not a place where the past comes to reopen itself. Not a place where old pain is allowed to fight for your attention until morning. The pillow was never meant to become a battlefield. It was meant to become a place where the body lays down, the mind softens, and the soul remembers that the day is over. There is a deep sorrow in lying down to rest and meeting the same wounds you have already survived. For many people, the night does not feel like peace. It feels like a room where every old hurt is waiting. The body touches the bed, the lights go low, and suddenly the mind begins to call up what was painful. The argument, the betrayal, the rejection, the mistake, the moment you felt small, the person who left, the words you never received, the apology that never came, the choice you wish you could undo. And instead of sleep, the pillow becomes a quiet war zone where the past returns fully armed. But the wound is not always asking to be fought. Sometimes it is asking to be finally understood without being reopened. The Stoic way does not teach you to pretend old wounds are gone. It does not ask you to smile over pain or bury what still needs care. It asks you to stop meeting every old wound as if the battle is still happening. That is the difference. The wound may be real, but the war does not have to continue every night. The memory may appear, but you do not have to become the person you were inside that moment again. The past may knock, but you do not have to hand it the whole room. A pillow becomes a battlefield when the mind forgets that rest has a boundary. During the day, you may hold yourself together. You may stay busy. You may move through responsibilities. You may smile, answer people, solve problems, and carry your usual strength. But at night, when there is no more noise, the old wounds see an opening. They rise because they want attention, and because you are tired, they feel stronger than they are. You begin to argue with them, explain to them, defend yourself against them, and relive them like they are happening again. This is how rest becomes war. The body wants to sleep, but the mind is fighting a person who is not there. The body wants to release tension, but the heart is holding a conversation that ended long ago. The body wants quiet, but the thoughts keep picking up old weapons: blame, regret, shame, anger, resentment, longing, and fear. Then morning comes, and you feel as if you have been awake in a hidden battle no one else can see. But tonight, you can begin to change the purpose of the pillow. You can decide that your bed is not the place where old wounds come to be prosecuted. It is not the place where the past gets another trial. It is not the place where people who hurt you receive more hours of your life. It is not the place where regret gets to punish you again. Your pillow can become a boundary, a quiet line, a soft command that says, "This is where I stop fighting." This does not mean the wounds disappear immediately. Some wounds are deep. Some memories have roots. Some pain has been carried for so long that the mind does not know who it is without it. But peace does not always begin with the wound vanishing. Sometimes peace begins when you stop giving the wound your full obedience. You can feel pain without entering the battlefield. You can notice the memory without picking up the sword. You can admit, "This hurt me," without using the night to hurt yourself again. The Stoics understood that the mind is trained by repetition. If every night becomes a place where you replay old wounds, the mind learns that the bed is where battles happen. It begins to associate silence with danger, darkness with memory, rest with emotional attack. But if you begin to meet those same thoughts with calm distance, the mind slowly learns something new. It learns that silence can be safe. It learns that darkness can hold peace. It learns that rest does not mean you are defenseless. It means you are no longer participating in every inner war. When an old wound rises tonight, do not rush to wrestle it. Do not ask why it came back. Do not shame yourself for still feeling something. Simply notice it. This is an old wound. That naming matters. It reminds the mind that this is not the present moment. It is a memory. It is an echo. It is a signal from a place you have already passed through. It may still ache, but it is not the whole truth of where you are now. Then ask gently, does this need action tonight, or does it only need compassion? Most old wounds do not need action at midnight. They do not need a message sent, a speech written, a person confronted, or a life decision made while the body is exhausted. They need compassion. They need space. They need the calm understanding that you were hurt, but you are not required to keep reliving the hurt to prove it mattered. This is one of the greatest turning points in inner peace. Learning that pain does not need to be performed for it to be real. You do not have to keep bleeding emotionally to prove that something wounded you. You do not have to keep replaying the scene to prove that it changed you. You do not have to keep defending yourself in your mind to prove you deserved better. The truth remains true even when you rest. The wound remains acknowledged even when you stop touching it. The lesson remains learned even when you let yourself sleep. Old wounds often come with old identities. The one who was abandoned, the one who was betrayed, the one who was overlooked, the one who was not chosen, the one who stayed too long, the one who trusted too much, the one who did not speak, the one who broke quietly. And sometimes, when the night is still, these identities try to climb into bed with you. They whisper, "This is who you are." But the Stoic mind answers, "No, this is what happened. It is not the whole of me." That distinction is freedom. You are not the wound. You are the one learning how to heal. You are not the betrayal. You are the one learning how to trust yourself again. You are not the mistake. You are the one learning how to choose with more wisdom. You are not the rejection. You are the one learning that your worth cannot be measured by who failed to see it. When the pillow becomes a battlefield, the mind keeps you trapped in the role of the wounded one. But when the pillow becomes a place of release, you begin to return to the role of the witness, the healer, the guardian of your own peace. You are no longer inside the old scene. You are beside yourself now, holding the part of you that was hurt and saying, "You do not have to fight tonight. I am here." There is power in that gentleness. A harsh mind says, "Why are you still affected?" A healing mind says, "Of course this mattered, but we do not have to relive it tonight." A harsh mind says, "You should be over this." A healing mind says, "We are learning to carry it differently." A harsh mind says, "Think about it until you understand everything." A healing mind says, "Rest may bring more clarity than another hour of pain." So tonight, make your pillow a place of surrender, not struggle. Let your head touch it as if you are laying down a shield. Let your shoulders release as if they no longer have to brace for old attacks. Let your breath slow as if the body finally understands that the enemy is not in the room. Let the night become a shelter, not a battlefield. If an old wound comes, give it a quieter answer. Not here, not with anger, not with denial, with calm authority. Not here. This bed is for rest. This night is for release. This body is not a battlefield. Say it until the mind begins to believe you. Because after tonight, you are learning that rest is not weakness. Rest is how the wounded parts of you stop living in alarm. Rest is how the soul repairs what overthinking keeps tearing open. Rest is how the mind discovers that it does not have to guard the past every hour to remain safe. Let the old wounds stand down. Let the inner war lose its soldiers. Let the pillow become soft again. You have fought enough battles in places where peace should have held you. Tonight you are allowed to stop turning your bed into another battlefield. Tonight you are allowed to lay down the weapons of memory, blame, shame, and defense. Tonight you are allowed to sleep without proving how much you have survived. And as the darkness settles, let this truth move through you gently. The past may have wounded you, but it does not get to own the place where you rest. And when the pillow stops becoming a battlefield for old wounds, you begin to understand something even deeper. The mind is not the only part of you that remembers. The body remembers too. The nervous system remembers the pressure, the fear, the disappointment, the sudden change, the words that landed too hard, the silence that felt unsafe, the moment you had to stay strong when something inside you wanted to collapse. And even when the mind says, "I am fine now," the body may still be whispering, "Are we truly safe?" There is a kind of pain that keeps returning, not because you want it back, but because some part of you never received permission to release it. This is why your nervous system can replay pain long after the event has passed. It is not trying to torture you. It is trying to protect you. It remembers what hurt, and it keeps bringing the pattern back to the surface, hoping you will notice the danger before it happens again. A tone of voice may remind you of someone who once made you feel small. A quiet room may remind you of loneliness. A delayed reply may remind you of abandonment. A mistake may remind you of shame. A difficult day may remind your whole body of a season when life felt too heavy to carry. And suddenly, you are not just reacting to this moment. You are reacting to all the old moments your nervous system has connected to it. The Stoics may not have used the modern language of the nervous system, but they understood the inner battle. They knew that impressions arrive in the mind before reason has time to examine them. Something happens, and the first wave rises quickly. Fear, anger, sadness, tension, suspicion. The Stoic practice is not to hate that first wave. It is to pause before you obey it. Because the first wave may be old pain speaking through a new moment. This is why some reactions feel bigger than the situation itself. Someone says one small thing and your chest tightens. Someone forgets something and your mind begins building a story of rejection. You face a small delay and your body acts as if your whole life is falling behind. You make one mistake and shame arrives as if you have ruined everything. The present moment may be small, but it has touched an old wound. And when old wounds are touched, the nervous system does not always respond to size. It responds to memory. This is not weakness, it is learned protection. At some point, your body may have learned that staying alert kept you safe, that reading people's moods helped you survive, that expecting disappointment softened the blow, that overthinking gave you a sense of control, that carrying tension prepared you for impact, that replaying pain helped you avoid being surprised again. These habits may have been born during hard moments, but if they continue long after the danger has passed, they become a prison. What once protected you begins to exhaust you. The nervous system replays what it has not released because it is still waiting for completion. It wants to know that the event is over. It wants to know that the lesson has been learned. It wants to know that you will not ignore the signal. It wants to know that you can protect yourself now without reliving everything. Until it learns this, it may keep sending reminders through the body. Tight shoulders, a restless chest, a racing mind, shallow breathing, a sudden heaviness, or the strange feeling that something is wrong even when nothing is happening. This is where Stoic rest becomes more than thinking differently. It becomes teaching the body that the present is not the past. You cannot always talk your body into safety with one sentence. Sometimes the body needs repetition. It needs proof. It needs calm actions repeated over time. It needs you to breathe instead of panic, to pause instead of react, to leave what harms you instead of explaining forever, to set boundaries instead of absorbing everything, to rest instead of proving your strength through suffering. Each of these choices tells the nervous system, we are not helpless anymore. We do not have to replay the old pain to stay safe. There is a difference between remembering pain and being ruled by it. Remembering says, this mattered. Being ruled says, this is still happening. Remembering can teach you. Being ruled can trap you. Remembering may bring wisdom. Being ruled brings the body back into alarm. The goal is not to erase every trace of what happened. The goal is to help the mind and body understand that the old event no longer has the same authority over this present night. Before sleep, old pain often replays because stillness gives the body space to speak. During the day, you may override your signals. You keep going. You stay busy. You ignore the tightness. You swallow the sadness. You push through the worry. But at night, when the demands fade, the body finally says, now will you listen? If you only fight the replay, you may miss the message beneath it. The message may not be, suffer again. It may be, please notice what I have been holding. So tonight, when an old pain rises, meet it differently. Do not immediately enter the story. Do not let the mind run back to every detail. Start with the body. Notice where the pain is speaking. Is it in the chest, the jaw, the stomach, the shoulders, the throat? Do not judge it. Do not panic over it. Simply notice. This is the body asking for safety. This is old tension asking to be seen. This is not danger. This is release trying to begin. Then speak to yourself with calm authority. That was then. This is now. Simple words, gentle words, but repeated slowly, they help separate memory from reality. That was then. This is now. I am here. I am breathing. I do not have to go back into that moment tonight. The nervous system needs these reminders because old pain can blur time. It can make yesterday feel close. It can make memory feel like danger. It can make a shadow feel like a storm. Your task is to bring it back to the present. The Stoic skill here is not emotional force. It is inner leadership. You become the steady voice inside the storm. You do not insult the fear. You do not shame the body for reacting. You guide it. You say, "Thank you for trying to protect me, but we are not in that place now." You say, "I have learned from this." You say, "I can rest without forgetting." You say, "I can be safe without replaying the pain." This is how release begins, not by demanding that the body stop feeling, not by pretending the past never touched you, but by creating a new experience inside the old pattern. The old pattern says, pain means panic. The new experience says, pain can be met with calm. The old pattern says, memory means danger. The new experience says, memory can pass through without becoming my home. The old pattern says, I must stay tense to survive. The new experience says, I can soften and still be protected. Many people want release to happen all at once. They want one night to remove years of stored tension, but release often comes in layers. A little less fear in the same situation, a little more space between trigger and reaction, a little more kindness toward yourself when the old feeling returns, a little more ability to say, this is an echo, instead of, this is my whole life. These small shifts matter. They are how the nervous system learns a new language. And the language of rest is slow. Slow breath, slow attention, slow return, slow permission to stop gripping, slow understanding that you do not have to solve the entire wound tonight. You only have to stop making the wound feel unsafe inside you. You only have to show the body that this bed is not the old battlefield. This darkness is not the old danger. This silence is not abandonment. This night is not here to harm you. It is here to hold you. The Stoic would remind you that what has happened is no longer within your control, but how you meet its echo is part of your practice. The echo may come, let it come, but do not bow to it as if it is the ruler. Do not let it drag you back into every old scene. Do not mistake the body's alarm for a command. It is only a signal, and signals can be answered with wisdom. So tonight, let the nervous system learn something new. Let it learn that not every memory needs a reaction. Not every tightness needs a story. Not every old fear needs to become a prediction. Not every ache needs another hour of analysis. Some pain simply needs a calm witness. Some tension simply needs a safe breath. Some memories simply need to pass through a body that no longer fights them. You are not broken because old pain still echoes. You are not weak because your body remembers. You are not failing because release takes time. You are learning how to become a safe place for yourself. And as you breathe into the quiet, let the old replay lose its force. Let the body understand, little by little, that the danger has passed. Let the mind stop turning every echo into a crisis. Let the heart stop bracing for what is no longer here. Tonight, you do not need to relive the pain to prove it was real. You do not need to stay alert to prove you are protected. You do not need to carry the old alarm into another night. The pain has been heard. The lesson can remain. The replay can end. And now, as this night comes to a close, let the weight begin to leave the places where it never truly belonged. You have seen how the mind becomes heavy when it carries old versions of you, unfinished problems, borrowed reactions, imagined disasters, hidden guilt, and memories that were never meant to become courtrooms. You have learned that not every thought deserves your attention, not every wound deserves another battle, not every burden belongs in your hands, and not every question needs an answer before you are allowed to rest. Tonight, you are not trying to erase your life. You are learning how to stop carrying it with clenched fists. You are learning how to let the past stay in the past, how to let tomorrow arrive in its own time, how to give other people back their emotions, how to stop mistaking pain for responsibility, and how to become a safe place for your own mind again. The Stoic path is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming free, free enough to feel without drowning, free enough to remember without reliving, free enough to care without collapsing, free enough to say, this is mine, and this is not mine, and finally know the difference. So as you drift deeper into the quiet, let one truth stay with you. You do not need to suffer all night to prove that your life matters. You do not need to carry every old pain to prove you are strong. You do not need to stay awake guarding wounds that are ready to soften. After tonight, your mind does not have to feel this heavy again. Let the breath slow. Let the shoulders drop. Let the heart unclench. Let the old stories fade into the distance. You have carried enough for one day. The rest belongs to time. And before you go, leave one simple word in the comments: released. Let it be your quiet signal that tonight you are putting something down that your soul has carried for too long. And if this brought peace to your mind, subscribe to the channel so each night you can return to stillness, strength, and a calmer way of living.